Hello, good people. It's nice to have everybody here. It's great. I really appreciate the friendly discourse. But we are past 7, so we're soon going to start our meeting once everybody gets settled. So it is so nice to see everybody here in the chambers with us this evening for our business meeting. I really appreciate the attendance, and I know that's driven by deeply held concerns and values related to an issue that is very, very important and dear to all our hearts. So I'm so glad to see everybody here this evening. And see my colleagues again. We just a little while ago finished our committee of the whole meeting that started at 5. So now I'm going to officially call to order the Kalamazoo City Commission business meeting for Monday, June 2nd, 2025. Clerk Boiling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Cooney. Present. Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Hoffman.
Present.
Commissioner Pradel.
Present.
Commissioner Wilson.
Present.
Vice Mayor Hess.
Present.
Mayor Anderson.
Here. Thank you, Clerk Boiling. May I have a motion to excuse Commissioner Decker from the meeting this evening?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Hoffman. Supported by Commissioner Cooney. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you, Commission. The motion passes. Well, we are honored this evening to have Chaplain Regina Mays with us, a missional chaplains, and it's a kind of a profoundly interesting moment a year later here for you to be with us and help us get started. So you'll be providing an invocation, and I'm going to ask everybody in the chambers to stand for the invocation and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Chaplain Mays.
First of all, I would like to say good evening to everyone. And thank you, Father God, for this day that you have made. And thank you, Mayor Anderson and Vice Mayor Hess and each city commissioner for the opportunity to be here to come before you to pray for this meeting. I also would like to thank our missional chaplain, Supervisor Mike Kemple, and of missional chaplains, and also Pastor James Harris, my pastor, Churches Community Church. I would also like to acknowledge at this time my husband, Chaplain Marcus Mays, whom you all may know better, who stood here many times at this very spot. But I wanted to acknowledge him tonight because without me even realizing it until a few days ago, that he had already prepared me for this months ago, and I thank him as well, as he is loved. Father God, I come before you this evening with prayer to welcome and ask your presence here in this place for this City Commission meeting. As we have gathered to do the work of this community as representatives, leaders, parents, caregivers, concerned citizens, young, old, and matured in grace, we come in one accord for the purpose of helping to meet the needs of those in our community and around Kalamazoo County. I ask that the mouths and the hearts of each city commissioner be used and led by the Holy Spirit to bring order, structure, direction, clarity, understanding, and confirmation for every area of this agenda tonight. I thank you that as they are led, they would come into agreement, Father God. And those who have come to speak, share, express concerns, or ask questions, that it would be respectful, received, and heard without judgment. And I ask that we all remember that we are part of this community and building it together, and that we will be good stewards over that which we have been given authority over. So I ask that mercy, grace, compassion, and forgiveness would set the tone and fill the atmosphere so that our Father God in heaven, that your kingdom would come and your will will be done on earth as in heaven, and that it is done in us and through us together, and that you would be glorified. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you again, Chaplain Mays. We are blessed to have you here with us and get us started this evening. We do have a proclamation this evening, and it is recognizing Gun Violence Awareness Day. Vice Mayor Hess will be reading the proclamation. I will come down, and I'm not sure how people want to organize around this, but anyone is involved and wants to be part of accepting this may come forward. So please do that at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. Come on up, anybody who wants to be a part of the proclamation. This is a proclamation on Gun Violence Awareness Day, June 6, 2025. Whereas every day, 125 people in the United States are killed by gun violence, and more than 260 are shot and wounded, with an average of more than 19,000 gun homicides each year. And whereas people in the United States are 26 times more likely to die by gun homicide than people in other high-income countries, and whereas in Michigan, which has 1,421 gun deaths every year with a rate of 14.2 deaths per 100,000 people, a crisis that costs the state $16.8 billion each year, of which $380.5 million is paid by taxpayers. Michigan has the 27th highest rate of gun deaths in the U.S. And whereas gun homicides and assaults are concentrated in cities, with more than half of all gun homicides in the nation occurring in 42 cities. And whereas cities across the nation, including in Kalamazoo, are working to end the senseless violence with evidence-based solutions, and whereas protecting public safety in the communities they serve is mayor's highest responsibility, and whereas support for the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizen goes hand in hand with keeping guns away from those who are a danger to themselves or others, and whereas mayors, council members, and law enforcement officers, in partnership with local violence intervention activists and resources, know their communities best, are the most familiar with local criminal activity and how to address it, and are best positioned to understand how to keep their citizens safe. And whereas gun violence prevention is more important than ever as we see gun violence continue to impact communities across the country. And whereas in January 2013, Hadia Pendleton was tragically shot and killed at age 15. And on June 6, 2025, to recognize the 28th birthday of Hadia Pendleton, born June 2, 1997, people across the United States will recognize the National Gun Violence Awareness Day and wear orange in tribute to, number one, Hadia Pendleton and other victims of gun violence, and number two, the loved ones of those victims. And whereas the idea was inspired by a group of Hadia's friends who asked their classmates to commemorate her life by wearing orange. They chose this color because hunters wear orange to announce themselves to other hunters when out in the woods. And orange is a color that symbolizes the value of a human life. And whereas anyone can join this campaign by pledging to wear orange on June 6th, the first Friday in June 2025, to help raise awareness about gun violence. And whereas by wearing orange on June 6, 2025, people across the United States will raise awareness about gun violence and honor the lives of gun violence victims and survivors. And whereas we renew our commitment to reduce gun violence and pledge to do all we can to keep firearms out of the hands of people who should not have access to them, and encourage responsible gun ownership to help keep our families and communities safe. Now, therefore, on behalf of the 55th City Commission and David F. Anderson, Mayor of the City of Kalamazoo, I do hereby proclaim the first Friday in June, June 6, 2025, to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day. I encourage all citizens to support their local community's efforts to prevent this tragic effects of gun violence and to honor and value human lives. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Rick O'Million. I'm a member of Kalamazoo Moms Demand Action, the Isaac Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, and also work with a lot of the people you see behind me in orange today. We all want to thank you for making another commitment in passing this National Gun Violence Awareness Day proclamation for the City of Kalamazoo. Over the years, and I think since 2016, the City Commission has made this proclamation designating the first Friday in June as National Gun Violence Awareness / Wear Orange Day in the city as a symbolic commitment to end gun violence in the city. We want to acknowledge that many organizations in Kalamazoo work together to reduce and hopefully at some point end gun violence in the city. It is the daily work that with this proclamation, combined with this proclamation, has made a difference in Kalamazoo. Together, we have changed gun laws, passed out gun locks and information, procured funding sources for GVP and intervention programs to do this work. We talked to our congregations and groups, and we've consolidated other actions together to move these efforts along. There are still tragedies and incidents occurring weekly which cause trauma and grief for families and friends, which lead doubters and the trolls and the haters to question and downplay the commitment of the City of Kalamazoo, its organizations, its departments, and its people, and their willingness, their strength in wanting to end gun violence. We are here in support to assert that our efforts won't stop, and we will continue to do something and will not give up. We are all here together, survivors, advocates, interrupters, interventionists, counselors, therapists, mentors, and community members. We're here in orange to proclaim with you, our commission leaders, that we will continue to work together to end gun violence in Kalamazoo and across our communities. Thank you. Can you take a picture? Yeah, please. If we can get somebody to do that.
You have to pull it a little bit. Go get everybody? Want to get further back? Once again, I want to thank everybody that came down in support of this very important notion, and I appreciate that we recognize a specific day, but obviously the effort is got to be a 24-hour day, 365-day-a-year effort, and a lot of people in this room are people that are doing that work every day. We are now down to the adoption of the formal agenda. Commissioners, are there any items on G, the consent agenda, you would like to have moved to H, the regular agenda? All right, Commissioners, seeing none, thank you. The agenda stands. Communications, Manager Isma.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I actually have communications this evening. I would like to call forward Jane Ghosh, CEO for Discover Kalamazoo. She's got a short presentation of some exciting news. So, Jane?
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here tonight. I am here to talk about an indoor sports facility for our community. We know that youth sports have significant benefits to youth well-being. It not only improves their physical health, but it improves their mental health, their cognitive health, and in many cases can lead to lifelong participation. That is why one of the many reasons Discover Kalamazoo does significant efforts in the youth sports area. We thought there was an opportunity to do more, so we commissioned a firm called Convention Sports and Leisure, or CSL, to assess the opportunity for a new facility in our market. After looking at every possible sport, they came to the conclusion that the biggest opportunity was for an indoor hardcourt facility, for example, where you can play volleyball and basketball. What you can see on the left side of this chart is local demand versus supply, and on the right side of the chart is regional demand versus supply. And in both of those quadrants, you see that the brown circle, which is for indoor hardcourt facilities, has the greatest demand relative to supply, so the most unmet demand, especially when it comes to regional participation. The reason for that is there is no what we would call a state-of-the-art tournament facility within this part of West or Southwest Michigan. The closest that we have there are two facilities in Grand Rapids that combined can host tournaments, but they're more than a mile apart. That's not ideal for the players, the families, or the tournament organizers. That's creating a very large opportunity in our market. And because of that opportunity, because those facilities don't exist, we're missing out on a very significant market. You know, because you see when we host the figure skating competitions and the ice hockey competitions and the wrestling competitions, you see in downtown Kalamazoo those teams, and they come out to the restaurants across our community. We do almost half of the hotel room nights in sports, in just those three sports of hockey, figure skating, and wrestling, because we have the right facilities for those sports. We do almost no room nights in basketball and volleyball because appropriate tournament facilities do not exist in our community. Way more kids play basketball and volleyball than play ice hockey, figure skating, and so forth. And, for example, ice hockey has much greater participation rates among higher income youth because they're such expensive sports to play. And in fact, having a new facility will enable us here in Kalamazoo County to serve a much broader proportion of youth by income level and by race. People of color are much more likely to play basketball and volleyball than ice hockey and figure skating. So this is the concept that we are recommending. You can see it would have 8 basketball courts. Those are the horizontal 4 across the top and 4 across the bottom, that if set far enough apart could also serve as 16 volleyball courts. You could have 16 volleyball games happening simultaneously, or 8 volleyball. They also thought that there was some opportunity for indoor turf, so they've built into the design additional indoor turf space in our community. And with then the size of this facility, the building itself is 3 to 4 acres, and the need for 900 parking spots, we were looking for about a 15-acre site for this facility. CSL looked at cost-benefit analysis for the program, and because of the significant gap in our market, as well as the participation rates with more than, we have a 20 million population with a 3-hour drive of Kalamazoo, and many of those kids play basketball and volleyball. Because of both the high participation and the lack of competitive facilities, they see this facility as breaking even by year 2 and being significantly profitable by year 4. And importantly, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we're financing it shortly, essentially local youth will benefit from the visitor economy. Local use of this facility will be prioritized Monday through Thursday, and that will significantly increase participation opportunities for underserved youth. We've talked to many basketball and volleyball organizers in our community, and we've heard consistently that kids just do not have the places to play, and therefore they're having to not offer the opportunities to all the kids who'd like to participate. It's also projected to create 628 full and part-time jobs. From an economic impact standpoint, of the approximately 600,000 attendee days, more than 200,000 of those will be non-local. That translates into hotel stays, which then means a projected annual economic impact of almost $50 million. We talked about the annual operating profit. Importantly, this facility is projected to generate 36,000 new hotel room nights in our community, and importantly, off-season. So not at peak occupancy season, but on the important shoulder season that the hotels are always seeking opportunities to fill those rooms. And so therefore, the way that we are planning to finance the facility is using something called the Event Center Financing Act of 2020. This was originally enabled to finance the Downtown Event Center, but as that ended up being 100% privately funded, it was still available for us to tap into. And what this act does is it creates an incremental 4% accommodations assessment only on hotel properties with at least 35 rooms and only on stays shorter than 30 days. Whether or not to enable this legislation was up to first the county needed to vote to hold a referendum, which they did, and then the referendum was held amongst the hotel and motel owners in Kalamazoo County with at least 35 rooms. They had one vote per room. All properties that were operating at the time had ballots sent to them, and overwhelmingly passed with 82% of votes being cast yes. So the hotels themselves voted to impose this incremental 4% assessment to finance the facility. The assessment began yesterday, so the assessment is now being applied to stays within the county as of June 1st. And because this is an assessment on the hotels themselves, the potential uses of that assessment revenue are restricted by this Event Center Financing Act. The primary benefit must accrue to the assessed hoteliers. So they are putting their own skin in the game to finance the facility because they see the opportunity for it. The intent is that the county would bond for the facility, and the debt service would be paid by the assessment revenue. Therefore, the county established an ad hoc committee to review potential sites once the hotel referendum had passed. So the Kalamazoo County Board of Commissioners established a committee that had 2 county commissioners, 3 representatives from municipalities, 1 for each of the final sites under consideration. Vice Mayor Hess represented the city of Kalamazoo at that committee. And then 8 members nominated by Discover Kalamazoo. Importantly, 2 hoteliers, a board member who's also a hotelier, 2 sports experts, 2 staff members, and 1 economic development expert. We met this past Thursday under the Public Meetings, Open Meetings Act. And I am here tonight because of the sites under consideration. The site recommended by that committee is in the city of Kalamazoo. So specifically in the Westgate area, I'll show you another map in a second, but this is a map of the entire county. The little diamonds are where hotels are located across the county. Any of the hotels other than Gull Lake View, which is up to the northeast, any of the other hotels around the county are within a 15-minute drive of this location. And here it is on a map, and you can see that it is within the boundaries of the city of Kalamazoo between Drake Road and 131 north of the Holiday Inns. You'll recognize the Holiday Inns there at the West Main Corridor. So this facility is north of that in the city of Kalamazoo. You'll also recognize that it's near Kalamazoo Central. And there are 2 public transit lines that come across here, one on Drake and one on West Main. And in a conversation with Sean McBride from Metro Transit, he indicated it's possible, not making any commitments, but it is possible that we could have the Alamo line, which goes on Drake, have a loop to be able to serve the facility to enable youth to participate. On June 17th, the ad hoc committee will be taking to the county the formal recommendation of the site. Obviously, all next steps are subject to the decision of the county board to accept that recommendation. But importantly, from a governance standpoint, the recommendation based on the Event Center Financing Act is that an authority be formed under the Municipal Partnerships Act between Kalamazoo County and the City of Kalamazoo, the municipality where the facility will be located, should they accept our recommendation. And then that authority board would be comprised of directors very much like that ad hoc committee, and would have one director to be nominated and appointed by the City of Kalamazoo. So we're very excited about this project. It will more than double the economic impact of sports tourism here to the market. Therefore, the hotels are behind it, and therefore, the community will get a new facility to serve local youth, 100% financed by the hotel assessment. Does anyone have any questions?
First of all, thank you so much for being here and for us to get this news hot off the press. I appreciate that very much. Questions, commissioners? Vice Mayor?
Jane, can you just say when, so if and when the county commission approves it, when could construction begin?
Well, obviously, we have to go through planning and so forth. Our hope is that potentially construction could begin, or at least some site preparation by the end of this year, then to take place next year. We would very much like to see the facility open in 2027. That's a very ambitious and optimistic timeline. We've been ambitious and optimistic throughout this entire project, and so far, we're on time, so.
Commissioner Wilson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Jane, for the presentation. I had one question. I'm very excited about the opportunity for local youth to get involved, and especially the Monday through Thursday. I was wondering, what are the anticipated entry costs for those youth that are interested in going? Are those covered, or will there be a fee?
So we haven't gotten that far in the project planning yet. Obviously, the intent is we do want this to be available and accessible, especially to underserved youth. We also need to work with, we have to recognize that there are other facilities within the market. Dave Morgan, the head of the local YMCA, he actually came and spoke in favor of the project, the Kalamazoo County Commission, because he sees that they have more demand than they can fulfill, and of course the benefit of youth sports. The immediate next step is finalizing the site and forming the authority. The authority will then do an RFP process to hire an operator. And part of that, what would be required of the operator is to balance, the needs of the community and the needs of the facility. And our intent very much is to have the reason this is such a nice fit is because it can benefit underserved youth. So.
Thanks.
Other questions at this time, commissioners? Yeah, Commissioner Pradel.
Thank you so much, Jane, for your and your team's efforts on this. You mentioned this was a very expedited process, but I know that there's been a tremendous amount of work in corralling everybody to make this possible, so thank you for all your energy and efforts to do that. I was curious if you wouldn't mind sharing, are there any partners that you've started to identify who might be local organizations that you could involve for the Monday through Thursday use of the facility, and I was also curious as well what types of competitions are maybe out there that you're starting to eye or identify to bid on or look to bring to Kalamazoo because of the facility.
Yeah, if it's okay, may I ask my team member Brian Persky to come up to answer those questions?
Sure, sounds great.
Thank you very much. So while I've been the face of the project, in public meetings, actually Brian has been the workhorse behind this and has put almost all of his time against getting this over the line. So may I introduce our Director of Business Development, Mr. Brian Persky.
Welcome, Brian.
Hey, Commissioner Pradel. I don't know what I can and can't share with this, but I will tell you that we've been looking at this for probably 2 to 3 years now, and we've talked to multiple youth basketball organizers in the area. We've talked to multiple youth volleyball groups in the area. Commissioner Hess knows a few of them. And so we did a feasibility study that goes back 2.5 years, I want to say, that one of the big purposes of that feasibility study was to interview stakeholder groups, both locally in Kalamazoo. They also spoke with groups that are based out of Michigan, based in the region, and we work with national rights holders all over the country that frankly have eyed Kalamazoo for events, but we don't have the facilities to bring them here. So we have one page in that report that is exhaustive of like the number of groups that said, yes, if you had a facility like this, we would bring our events here. So our goal is to kind of marry those two to kind of help grow local sports organizations, basketball and volleyball being the big ones, and kind of have them grow their programs by hosting these events here and growing their programs, and then also kind of like what Jane just said, like supplementing those with national rights holders that can also bring their events on the weekends and kind of make this thing all work together. So it's an exhaustive list, but we have spoken with a lot of local people who live in the community and own these events themselves and are looking to grow their programs. So.
Can you talk a little bit about the trade show reference to staff and some of the interesting groups that are
Yep, we have a list of, so one of our staff members, Brad Beauregard, he's our sports event development manager. He was just at a trade show that would have been less than 2 months ago, and he met with at least 12 groups that when he showed them plans of the facility and the layout of it, they basically said, you know, when's it opening? You know, so like we started a list probably a year and a half ago that when we felt like this was going to become a reality or close to a reality, we started tracking those things, and every show we go to, there's planners that are, there's a lot of planners even just within the state of Michigan, and there's a lot of planners within a 2 to 3 hour drive radius that are looking at this facility. So we go to probably 5 or 6 sports trade shows a year, and there's groups, there's basketball, there's volleyball groups, really everywhere in our backyard and also all over the country. So there's a big demand. So.
Kind of a connecting the dots moment here as well. Yeah. So the target that you're eyeing for this to open also will coincide somewhat with when the opening of the arena project will conclude. Do you see any connections or opportunities that might present themselves because of having both online at the same time?
100%. I would say the two venues are very different in the sense that obviously the downtown event center is more of an entertainment venue and going to have some big tenants there, but we definitely see a world where you could have the tournament at this facility. Let's say it's a volleyball tournament or some kind of a large-scale basketball tournament, and then the finals or the semifinals are hosted down here, for example. Obviously, that's all dependent on schedules and everything, but that is sort of the dream, is to have, you know, a lot of the early part of the competition take place there, and then maybe you have the finals downtown at the event center. So that'd be a pretty cool scenario. So
yeah, wonderful. Yep. Thank you so much again.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Thank you very much. Any other questions? All right, appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We will be back, assuming the county accepts the recommendation, asking the city to form an authority, and I believe that your city attorney is already at work with our outside counsel to help make that happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I just want to take a moment here just to thank Discover Kalamazoo and team. Just as a reminder, this is a statutorily created entity that, you know, exists throughout the state of Michigan, that is funded through motel taxes as well to encourage tourism in Kalamazoo. And I would say that more than ever, Discover Kalamazoo has been working with and assisting the city of Kalamazoo, even though it's a county-wide entity. And I really appreciate that partnership and that interest, and I think there's just a lot of great things to be said about this. I am aware that there were other locations, and I'm very happy that this location is in the city of Kalamazoo, and it's as adjacent for access as by far and away any site would have been. So thank you for all that. Thanks for the team that helped make this decision, and I hope the county is willing to move forward with this. So appreciate it. Communications, again, you're interested in?
That concludes my communications.
All right, thank you so much. Now is the opportunity for public comments. So just a reminder, you will have 4 minutes. Please state your name and whether you live in the city. And there we go. We can start public comments.
Go ahead.
I would like to say thank you for donating to my fundraiser.
You're very welcome. It also wins the award for the shortest public comment ever. Next, please.
Hello, my name is Victoria. I live in the Vine neighborhood. My home, where I've lived for almost 7 years, is right on the edge of the proposed B on Burdick development. It's a challenge for me to speak to you all today because it feels very unlikely that I and my neighbors will be truly heard. It is not lost on me that this development is backed by former Kalamazoo politicians who know how to get what they want. But I hope that you will give all of our voices, our lives, and our well-being the care and consideration that we deserve. I care deeply about our neighborhood and my neighbors. I've personally invested a lot of time and money into supporting the natural environment and boosting biodiversity to support our non-human neighbors while nurturing spaces that feel good for humans too. I see so many of my neighbors using their own personal and limited resources to care for each other. We are a community. We are not an empty lot to be taken over. I have a lot of big concerns about this proposed development and how it will impact the day-to-day and long-term well-being of myself and my neighbors. Among my concerns are the environmental impacts of a 5-story building and the addition of massive amounts of concrete, which will erase green space, as well as increased traffic at an already very dangerous intersection at Vine and Rose, parking issues, noise, light pollution, increased criminalization of neighbors who don't fit into the vision of this workforce housing, increased property taxes leading to gentrification and the loss of homes, and more. I'm all for creating housing, but this housing would not be affordable or accessible. One of my biggest concerns is how little the voices of myself and my neighbors seem to matter in all of this. The developers, and the city for that matter, have made almost no effort to open communication, and what they have done feels disingenuous at best. The city only alerted a very small number of affected neighbors about the Planning Commission's initial rezoning vote. The developers held only one single listening session that had almost no advertising. The only place I saw it posted was a Facebook link sent by a neighbor, which I couldn't view because I don't have Facebook. Y'all know where we live. If you honestly wanted our input, you would be able to communicate with us and reach us. Even communication with the board of the Vine Neighborhood Association has been abysmal. People from the city and the development have spoken to the executive director, but not to the board. So I'm here tonight to ask you to deny the request for rezoning. Many of our neighborhood concerns, such as the height of the building and percentage of concrete coverage, will be addressed by a development that comes together within the current Live Work 1 zoning. If the commission is not prepared to deny the request for rezoning, I ask that you table this vote and give the developers more time to open honest and authentic lines of communication with residents and the VNA board and make real, tangible commitments to environmental sustainability and responsible care for our neighborhood. Listening and caring for people isn't hard if you genuinely care. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, I'm Kay. I really wasn't going to speak today, but I heard some concerning things. Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman, for bringing up the shared prosperity. I think that's a big conversation that needs to be had. I heard that there's jobs to be created, but I just want to remind you that the fair market rent right now is $23.16. A person has to be making $23.16 to be able to pay for housing without being cost overburdened. That means that they're not paying more than 30% of their income in rent alone. And there is I would say almost half of the residents that live in this city are cost overburdened, meaning they're paying more than 30% of their income in rent, especially Black residents who are 56% of rent overburden, according to the ALA statistics. I want to make that clear because I really do appreciate there's a lot of questions. I heard community concern about involving residents in this process, and I hope that those concerns and the communication is very intentional, right? Because it's very easy to bring in developers. It's very easy to use funding to, create like stimulate the economy, but it oftentimes leaves residents who are below the federal poverty line, and within the Alice statistics, the Alice community, it leaves people behind. It displaces people, and even in a small number, like if we need to guarantee that all the people who are impacted by these projects are actually going to be benefited from these projects, because it feels like a lot, sometimes like you uplift a part of the community, but a lot of the community falls into the cracks of these things. And I'm talking in general with these tax breaks, with like HUD money. I mean, I've been looking at all this, and it really propels gentrification in many ways. So I want y'all to be intentional when it comes to community concerns, especially in the north side. So I was hearing about gun violence, and like there's an economic aspect and a housing aspect to gun violence. We need to be very intentional about this, because housing is a human right, and it's a lot of times, like, children need things to do after school, you know, like kids need to be busy. A lot of these programs, like, they need more funding. They need more robust funding so that kids can have things to do after school, where, you know, if parents are working for the community, like these jobs, you know, parents are working 12 plus hours at these jobs. What is the city guaranteeing for residents, right? To prevent gun violence prevention requires economic, like an economic boost for the community, and housing and resources and things that the city is not doing because the other statistics show that the wealth gap is just it's widening. You know, there's the school to prison pipeline in KPS schools where kids there's a crisis of illiteracy in the schools, and that's important for prosperity. So I just want to make a note of that. I want to make a note about also the rezoning. Like, we are in a global climate crisis and environmental crisis in Kalamazoo. We need to be intentional when we are rezoning areas that are the last green spaces, that have like mature green spaces. Those are important for flooding, and that was said here in this commission, that, you know, like, the flooding problem is bad, and it's because we've seen the green space, mature green spaces being developed, being rezoned. So I want you all to be very intentional when you approve these you know, these efforts, these rezoning efforts, that you make sure you're protecting the environment. That's very important.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, my name is Shona. That was my son Sincere saying thank you. Also, when we're talking about gun violence, we need to realize there is a problem with police brutality. Police are murdering our black and brown women and our men and even our children. So when we talk about gun violence, that is something else that you need to take into consideration. It's also seeing that our police that are supposed to be protecting us are murdering our black and brown innocent people. That is something that should be taken into consideration when we are talking about gun violence. Just like we need to make sure that our children have something to do after school, because us as parents, with the way that rent is too damn high, we have to work multiple jobs to make rent, to have groceries, to make sure our children have the basic needs. So when we're working multiple jobs, who is raising our children? There's a lot of us that are single parents. I just got lucky that I can be a single parent and work one job and find other ways to make sure that I have things that I need and my kids need, and I'm raising my kids, but many people aren't that lucky. So who are raising our kids? I work at a school and I see many kids that the street is raising, and to them, normalcy to them is seeing somebody being shot with a gun or killed with a gun. An 8th grader a few years ago seeing somebody shot in the face, and to them that's normal. That's not what normalcy should look like for them. Normalcy for them should look like is having a safe place to go to, a meal on the table, things to do after school. And this is something that should be important to this community, to widespread throughout Kalamazoo. Even those that are on the street should have something to do, a place to go home to, a safe place, a meal on the table. This is why we're up here all the time talking talking about things that have to do with our children, because they're out here, they're seeing the reality, what's really going on that many of us were sheltered from. They're seeing many wake up that live on the north side, and they're waking up and being just glad that they survived that day. They survived that night, because in a reality that they live in, those that live in either Alamo or Interfaith, people are being murdered all the time, and this is something that they see. So can you imagine when you see this and they're going to school or they're out on the street, their first priority isn't the curriculum that is thrown in their face. It's survival. It's understanding what is happening, what is going on. How are we going to protect our kids that are seeing this? Us as adults already have a hard time when it has to do with things like that. Can you imagine what a 2, 3, 4, 6, or 7-year-old has to understand the mentality of some of this stuff? Like, this is the reality of our children. It's important to make sure that they have something safe, they have a meal, they understand that there's somewhere to go after school, and not be on the streets, because in reality, we have to work multiple jobs. Rent is over $1,000. Food is going up in cost. The things that our kids need are going up in cost. Just like the storm that just passed. You know how many people got denied emergency food stamps that actually get food stamps? They got denied. How do you think they're supposed to replace all that food that they lost? Once again, it's something else that is a barrier that is put in place to hold them back from growing. Just take all that in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good evening to our mayor, our vice mayor, city commissioners, and staff. My name is Charlotte Davis, and I do live in Kalamazoo. A special thank you to Brother Rick for his beautiful statement tonight, and also thank you for this proclamation that was read in support of gun violence awareness prevention. May we honor and remember and never forget each and every loved one that we have lost here in Kalamazoo to gun violence and our state and in our nation, and may we also remember all survivors. May our practices and policies be common sense to protect targeted demographics and community members and loved ones. And also may our policies get to the root causes of community violence. And this was detailed in the gun violence proclamation that was written by Commissioner Tammy Ray and Gwendolyn Hooker that was passed by the city and county commission. So thank you again. A special thank you to all who are doing this difficult work. Over this weekend, we woke up with a concerning attack, and it was a reminder that even in our beloved community, as we already know that things have gotten bad, that we have to be prepared for the worst. My ask is to you all is that you please lead and represent us and lean into courage, no matter what. That same courage that I spoke about before that Dr. Martin Luther King asked for at the kitchen table and received it. Please tap into it. Whatever your source is, please tap in. Because as we walk forward, we need to do so unwaveringly, steadfast for what is right, and there's no time for fear for any of us. We also want to ask that you please join us for the Civil Rights Board, which is this Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Of course, we'll be here in the chambers, and we continue to ask you all to please lean in with us and lean in for support. Lastly, I see on the agenda later tonight that there is a discussion about the executive search services to assist in the city manager search. So a few questions to committee members, and I'm hoping that this discussion, these questions will be answered. How did you rank these firms? I didn't see that in the packet. Also, how did you all use an equity and anti-racism lens in your decisions and in your rankings? Have you all talked to these firms beyond this written word or these proposals? Meet and discuss virtually and ask more questions. Also, I'm seeing price ranges on these proposals. Did you give a set amount, or did you ask the firms to offer an amount? And right now, it is my hope that we're not securing only the cheapest rate, but the most quality for what we need specifically in our Kalamazoo community. This is an investment investment for our city's future, and this decision impacts so many of us. So my ask tonight, Tim Oaken talks about the written word and not having it being worshiped, so I would just ask and suggest that you please take your top 4, and if you have not, talk virtually to them before any decisions are made. Also, can you all please wait on a decision? Thank you for offering these to community members. On Friday it was released and a little hard to open the PDFs. And then also, as you are looking for a firm, I saw the words equity and anti-racism for the first one. The fourth one as well, I saw something about inclusion and equity, and that is awesome. But we need to ask those questions about what that really means, because we don't only want words, we want deeds and actions as well. And then lastly, I know this is not the only piece, but this is the vital piece that is threaded through everything and in this decision that needs to be made. I look forward to hearing more. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, everyone, again. Excuse me. My name is Tina McClinton, and I am from Kalamazoo. I live in Kalamazoo. I've lived in my home for 36 years. I live in Southtown neighborhood. I live in the floodplain area, as James Baker calls us, the Bowl of Kalamazoo. I've been coming here for 7 years to ask you to stop destroying destroying natural spaces, our last natural green space in the home neighborhood, Lake to Stockbridge to John. Been on the city board's radar destruction for years now. Has a natural water basin, wetlands, over 100 trees, big and small. It's our wildlife's last home. You need to stop destroying green spaces. We don't have many left in Kalamazoo. You've just about destroyed them all. And if you destroy ours, the whole neighborhood of family-owned homes, you will flood us out even more. Just like you did Smokes on Burdick, Bright Eyes Brewery, the next one that will go will be Nagel's Top Dog. So when you build your water reclamation plant, you will build it up higher than the rest of the businesses around, and purposely flood other people out of business, just like the other businesses. Destroying our whole neighborhood. You can make money by buying land cheap and selling it to your rich developers, but you never address the failing storm drains that flood out the streets for days. The flooding backs up the storm sewers in the streets and in the groundwater, and this is where our drinking water comes from. This cannot be healthy. For all we want is dry streets, just like the rest of the neighborhoods have. When are you going to get it? Like, the more you build things in flooding areas, the more you flood out residents. Where does water go when you build up higher? To the lowest point, which is us. When Bronson built up their parking lots higher, where does that water go? To us, to the lowest point. Senior Service Building on Crosstown built their property up higher. Where's that water all going? Back to us. Now you're going to build a water reclamation plant. Where's that water going to go? Back on Crosstown and Lake. That's going to flood everybody out again. Every neighborhood deserves dry streets, storm sewers that work and not backing up, clean water, clean storm drains, and well-working storm drains in every neighborhood, not just the chosen neighborhoods. Every neighborhood should have dry streets. No one should have to deal with sewage in the streets from the city's backup. You know, and you let all these rich developers build condos and apartments that no one can afford to live in. I work 2 jobs. I work 60 hours a week, and I still managed to come here for the last 7 years to ask you to fix things instead of building without fixing the problem. That's the problem with KVCC. You built KVCC, but you never fixed the issue with the flooding, which made it worse. You're doing the same thing with homes. You're building homes, but people can't afford to live in them. You have so many children that live out on the streets. You have some that sleep in apartment buildings. How horrible is that? Kalamazoo should be better than this. And what's wrong with building little homes? Why does everything have to be a big, huge apartment building crammed in a little area? Why can't people own homes nowadays? They don't have to be something huge, something they can afford. Because landlords are ridiculous nowadays. They're charging people so much rent, $1,200 to $1,400 for a studio. Who can afford that? Not none of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good evening, everybody. Toby Hannah Davies, city resident. I am really glad that I was here for your work session about the transformational brownfield plan, and I want to thank all of you that spoke up about the affordability of the new residential units that will be created. I was excited to hear that the Spearflex building next to Shakespeare Pub will have 57 residential units, so close to downtown, and that the building on 619 Porter Street in the north side, which has been vacant since before I moved here in 2000, that will have 58 residential units. We need those units so badly, and I'm here to thank you, all of you that spoke up for the lower affordability levels needed. I am very grateful that we have a city commission that is so tuned in to preventing gentrification, because I think everybody here understands that if the units that are built in areas that are surrounded by lower cost housing are market rate and above, that is gentrification, and that's not what we want. Mixed income housing is wonderful, and it's not that none of it can be market rate. So thank you for working on that as the project develops. It's really exciting that the state is providing so much different kinds of tax abatements. I think 5 or 6 different streams of revenue for the developers. Obviously, since it's brownfields, the redevelopment is expensive for the developers, but there's got to be a way with all of that income streams to include affordable housing for people who live in the neighborhood and want to stay there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, my name is Andrew Lehman. I'm a member of Isaac and a part of the Anti-Racism Task Force. I lived in Kalamazoo for 30 years and operated a business here for 27. 2 of my children live in Kalamazoo. All our kids went to KPS and got a great education. We're prepared for the world in which we live. I go to church in Kalamazoo. I volunteer at several organizations in Kalamazoo. I'm currently living in Ostimo, but I consider myself a Kalamazoo person. I appreciate the opportunity to speak again about the role and significance, or the lack thereof, of the Civil Rights Board of Kalamazoo. I'll start where I did 2 weeks ago at this meeting. We all do want an effective Civil Rights Board, correct? I'm not claiming to be an expert, but it appears to me that quite possibly the city structure, with notable exceptions, and the Civil Rights Board have a quite different view on what the word effective means from their vantage point at this time. The city, by what I'm hearing and seeing, and not hearing and not seeing, is seeming to want to promote a "there is no racism in Kalamazoo" denial approach, similar to the climate denial approach taken by some. Promoting a basically figurehead board will help keep alive the myth that there's no racism or discrimination happening in the lives of people of color in our city. It's understandable that no one in the city government wants to be speaking on Channel 3 about racism in Kalamazoo, but that is not a valid reason to be passively or overtly resisting the desire of the Civil Rights Board to have an active and productive role in the city's work. A nearly toothless Civil Rights Board would aid in a no racism denial approach. But what would be the point of having a civil rights board that is essentially on the sidelines and not really in the game? From the other side of the debate, an effective civil rights board would assist the city in identifying and helping to correct situations where acts of racism and discrimination have allegedly occurred. The Civil Rights Board could and should be seen as an asset, not a threat, in our rising to the beloved community that Dr. King promoted, and I believe we all want to experience. I believe there are many options between the two polar extremes of an anemic civil rights board or a board with full enforcement powers with the city attorney did say was a possibility, albeit maybe difficult to achieve and expensive. However, if we can come up with roughly $500 million, I've heard, for an arena in town that will serve overwhelmingly a white audience, I would think we should be able to come up with $350,000 to appropriately equip a civil rights board that will serve people of color. In actuality, Dr. King's vision of a beloved community will benefit all of us, regardless of our racial makeup. Let's spend our energy finding a way for the city and the Civil Rights Board to work together addressing the reality of what's happening to the people of color in our city. It will take courage. It will be uncomfortable at times, but I believe that it's the next step needed in Kalamazoo's march to freedom for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
My name is Angela. I'm with the locally unhoused, of course, still here trying to advocate. I ran into a couple of problems and issues. Everybody's worried about all the waste that have to be, all the trash that's being thrown out and all the things that are having to cost a little bit extra money for the city to be able to take care of because of the unhoused and the mental disabilities and things like that that make more trash, I guess. But I was coming from the Mission, and there was somebody taking garbage out from the Mission, and they had a bag of brand new socks that had barely been worn. They were throwing them in the garbage. So this is not the only time I've ever seen waste as far as those things go, but there's been a lot of times, myself being unhoused, homeless, cold, dirty, they didn't have no socks for me. You know, there's money that's being put out there for things that we need, and now they're throwing them in the garbage. There's not even a second chance for them, they just throw them away. Makes me wonder about any of the things that they really honestly have been throwing away that we could have used without costing more money. Because I've seen the drop and throw away brand new strawberries. I mean, like, there's got to be something put in order to where the waste is still coming back to the community, even if it's getting stuck through a door at nighttime where they know that they can come pick it up. You know, it's not fair for us to have to be hungry and cold when the money is out there to be able to, you know, give us the necessities that we need, because people like us advocate for that money. So, like, I'm trying to bring as many people as I can bring to show them that this is what it is and they have a right to speak. So I'm going to continue to do that, but I just think that needs to be brought to all of y'all's attention about how much waste that could be used for the homeless, for anything for that matter, that they are doing. I mean, like, there's things, I don't know who's doing it or what, but there needs to be some kind of a situation to investigate that, because, like, there was like 50 pairs of socks. And I mean, I've gone without gloves and socks and swamp foot, and people get their feet amputated all the time because of that. And I mean, it makes us go crazy with not having the belongings that we need, even if there was a way to change somebody's mentality and the habits that they have in their life, to be able to get them better, to be able to get them to go on with life, you know? They can't do it because the little things in life that they need, like socks, showers, you know, there's stipulations on everything. I mean, it's ridiculous to me to see all that stuff go in the garbage and the amount of disrespect that the employees do put on us, because they are very disrespectful. So, with that being said, y'all God bless and have a good night.
Thank you. Next, please. All right, thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Karen Williams, and I live on 805 South Rose, which is very close to the the Beyond verdict that's being developed. Yeah.
You can move it.
As needed, thank you. So my name is Karen Williams, and I'm on 805 South Rose Street, and I just wanted to point out that we do have a number of neighbors on Rose Street who are here tonight and just representing the view from that block. We've heard, I was at the Planning Commission meeting, and it seemed like there was a lot of thought put towards the intersection of Burdick and Vine, and less thought on the impact for the residents who are on Rose Street and have been there for a while and are essentially going to be the neighborhood and the community that is going to help make this space the vibrant community hub space that's being envisioned. And to be honest, as I'm sitting here listening to all of the other comments, I'm overwhelmed at the scale of what our city needs. I knew this. We're in a climate crisis. We have an economic crisis. It's almost too much for the city to handle. It's something that has to be handled by the individual transformation, the neighborhood transformation on a really local level. So this development has the potential to be an example of what that could look like for the city, not doing business as usual. And I really want to challenge everyone involved, including everyone here, to put the time and the resources and the work into really making this development something that's going to transform our block. And I did submit a letter. I personally, from where our house sits, I do have concerns about the 5-story height. And I was asking specifically for an endorsement from the Vine Neighborhood Association and haven't heard. So I would just ask the commission, why isn't there an endorsement if you have not received one already from the Vine Neighborhood Association? And similar for Edison, this is on the intersection of downtown, of Edison, of the Vine. So how can these communities come together? And I don't see this moving forward without a really proactive voice from all of those community members. So thank you again for all of your service. I know you have a lot to take into consideration. I'm hoping that this development and the way that our neighbors can come together to really make it something different than business as usual could have a ripple effect throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Is there anyone else who wants? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ashante Collins, and I am a resident of the city of Kalamazoo. I am the Anti-Racism Task Force lead with Isaac. I speak tonight on behalf of our team and as a resident of Kalamazoo County to express our full support for the Civil Rights Board and to advocate for a process that truly empowers its work and honor its purpose. The board was created with the intent to protect the rights of all Kalamazoo residents, especially those who have historically been denied access to housing and have experienced discrimination during that process. The ordinance that established this board, which the City Commission passed unanimously, is clear in its commitment to stand against discrimination based on race, gender, income source, conviction history, and survivor status. And being someone who has experienced multiple brackets myself, I commend you for passing that, but also policy alone does not equal progress. That progress requires structure, participation, and trust in the systems built to uphold it. The Civil Rights Board has carried its responsibility with courage, even as it faces significant barriers. Among the most pressing is the fact that this board continues to operate with multiple unfilled seats. And this is not because of a lack of willing or capable individuals. In fact, recently, a highly qualified individual, someone with lived experience as an unhoused person and with deep deep roots as they have just joined us in this community, applied and was ready to serve. Their perspective would have been brought not only knowledge but firsthand insight that's critically needed in this space, and yet their application did not advance. So where do we go from here? We are not here to assign blame or call out individuals, but we are here to call in a more democratic and transparent process, one that allows decisions about public service to be made with the involvement of the full City Commission and not left to just one person alone. This board was created to reflect the voices of our community, and the process for appointing its members should reflect that same principle. No single person should be the gatekeeper of public service. When decisions are made behind closed doors without input or explanation, trust is eroded, and so is the legitimacy of the very systems we worked so hard to build together in this community. The community asked for this board, the commission answered that call, and we thank you, but now we must ensure that the board is not only allowed to exist, but also it is equipped to succeed. To the Civil Rights Board members here tonight, we thank you, we see your commitment, and we understand the weight of this work. You were not appointed to sit quietly, you were chosen to lead courageously, and you have our full support in doing so. And to the Commission, we respectfully urge you to move forward with a process that is collaborative, transparent, and equitable, one that allows more voices, especially those with lived experience, to have a seat at the table, one that reflects the values of this city and the very ordinance you proudly passed at one time. Let's not let this moment become a missed opportunity. Let it be a recommitment to justice, inclusion, and shared leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Is there anyone else that'd like to take advantage of this public comment time? See no one, I want to thank everybody who took the time and made the effort to come here to our City Commission meeting and take advantage of the opportunity to provide a public comment. Next on our agenda is F, and that is public hearings. So we have 2 public hearings, and I would now like to open a public hearing to receive comments on an ordinance to rezone all properties on Roscam and Millard Courts and 736 East Crosstown Parkway from manufacturing limited M-1 to live work 1 and manufacturing general M2. Manager Rissman, is there a staff presentation on this?
Yes, we have our Assistant City Planner who will give a brief overview of this item.
Good morning, Mayor and Commission. This is the ordinance in front of you is the second reading for the rezoning of the properties that the mayor mentioned. This is a street and a dead end or a cul-de-sac at the intersection of East Vine and Portage Street at the southeast corner. The area, this part of the city is heavily manufacturing and is zoned as such. When you get up along Portage Street, you get that diversity of land uses, and this was an area zoned M1 for many, many decades. M1 does not permit new residential structures. This originally started out from a resident calling seeking to develop a home on one of the couple vacant lots on these streets. So that had staff look at it, and where the Live Work 1 permits residential uses, and I've discussed before, Live Work 1 permits beyond the residential uses as well. So it's a much better fit for the residential character, or even for those properties on Crosstown if there was ever someone looking to redevelop something beyond that. Where residential wasn't seen as a good fit because we would be putting a residential zone spot in the middle of the city.
Thank you. Just want to remind anybody that's paying attention to this. So this, we set the public hearing for this particular action as we are required to do at our previous meeting. Setting the public hearing requires this to come in front of us twice, and you did also provide an overview of what was being requested here at that time as well. Team, questions for Bobby Durkee at this point? No? All right, seeing no questions, and I think we probably did have some questions last time this came up, and those were answered. Now is the opportunity for anyone in the chambers who would like to comment on this particular item. If you want to, please come forward, state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes. Seeing no one, I will now close the public hearing. The recommended action is a motion to adopt the ordinance. Is there a motion? Motion made by Commissioner Cooney.
Support.
Supported by Vice Mayor Hess. Discussion, commissioners? All right, thank you so much. Clerk Borland, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hoffman?
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hess?
Yes.
Mayor Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney?
Yes. Thank you, commissioners. The motion passes. Next on the agenda is the second public hearing. I would now like to open a public hearing to receive comments on an ordinance to rezone 802, 814, 822, and 824 South Burdick Street, and 107 and 115 West Vine Street from Live Work 1 to Downtown 3. Is there a presentation on this one, Manager Isma?
Yep, Bobby Durkee's got a brief overview of this one.
Thank you again. I did not prepare a presentation on this one. My office did receive a few more comments since the last public hearing, and I was able to meet with some residents last week. This proposal is the 6 parcels described proposed to be rezoned from the live work zoning to the D3. The primary difference between, the most significant difference between the D3 zoning and the live work zoning here is the uses are almost an exact match, and I say almost because there are some that are permitted in the live work, but permitted with design standards. I think it's just 1 or 2. Otherwise, it's a mirror image of uses. And what a design standard is, that usually means you have to, yes, that use is allowed, and there's usually some standard in there. So as a complete hypothetical, a drive-through box next to a residential, a development standard may say, keep the decibels low. And it also permits an extra 2 stories in height, where the live work permits a maximum of 3, the D3 permits a maximum of 5, and the other most significant difference is instead of an 85% impervious coverage, this zone would permit 100% impervious coverage. And for the rezoning, it's, there's always that mix between what's coming in the zoning supporting it. Weighing that with the multiple zones at this corner and the future land use classifications, the D3 seemed like a really close match to the live work zoning, and that was how the applicant presented it, and staff was in support of that. And if there's any questions on it, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you for being here and providing us that information. Once again, there was also a presentation about this request at a previous meeting as well, when we set the hearing date for today. Can you tell us a little bit about the Planning Commission and what the decision was and what discussion tied to that decision?
Yes. 2 things that jump out to me from the Planning Commission is I find that they will, this was a project they knew had the PPP, so they were glad to see the action with the PPP. It's something that they asked for on a lot of them. And the Planning Commission brought up one of their focuses was the uses permitted, and what that change was, and that was where the 2 land use categories was almost an inexact match. And that was one of their primary concerns, recognizing what types of uses are here. They seem to have a good understanding of the concept of the 5 stories and the coverage, and I do not recall much inquiry on that from them.
Okay, thank you so much. Questions for Assistant Planner Durkee at this time? I mean, we'll have more time to discuss, but if you want to specifically ask questions, you think, also we could ask Bobby Durkee back at some point as well.
I was just wondering, some of the comments, I wonder if it'd be worth if you were, Mr. Bogan wanted to speak to any of those as well about just neighborhood engagement or any of the other concerns that were brought up in public comment.
Public comment that I did meet with 2 neighbors on Thursday. I don't know if Mr. Bogan wants to come up and speak, but I do know that affordability is part of their plan for the development. At this phase of the rezoning, you know, I figured that would be later, but I do know that in addition to the childcare is one of the commercial uses that they would like to do there, and the entire ground floor would be commercial, and then it's 80 units. I do not have an exact breakup of the affordability mixture, but I don't know that that's known yet.
Just another question here. This is a very, very preliminary action, so this is not approving a specific project. This is actually, in essence, the very first step for any project. What other kinds of steps would have to be gone through for a project to eventually, you know, come to be approved and possibly be constructed from the city's perspective?
A great question. So exactly correct. A rezoning, it can be a little nuanced in the communication. A rezoning is, for the public, it's a review of the standards of the zone and the uses and what it allows. It is not a project-specific review. So where is that opportunity to know, hey, well, what's going to happen after it rezones? This particular project would be subject to the city's site plan review process. And in addition, there's still a historic district review to the Historic District Commission, which is another public board. They would have to vote and decide on the new structure to go into place. So there would be an opportunity for comment at that point. And then for our site plan review process, that is an administrative 2-meeting review process. Once you enter our full site plan, those site plans are posted on the city's website until the site plan is approved. Neighbors can ask to be notified of site plans. In addition, they're always posted on the city website, and the Planning Commission has provided a list of all projects in site plan review. Now, what is site plan review? I call it our commercial development process. That's where a lot of your final design standards such as stormwater, infrastructure, making sure it's the right height, the maximum number of units, all the zoning criteria, that's like the deep wash or site plan review. So prior to development, a project of that size has to get site plan approval. So there's no construction that takes place until site plan's approved, which is a multi-layered, multi-code review before the cranes get out there.
I appreciate that. That's helpful. And I appreciate that you brought up stormwater, since obviously that was expressed as a concern. The zoning change just allows from a 95% impervious to 100%. Is that correct?
It is 85 to 100%. And something, at least I could bring to the Commission's attention, when it comes to stormwater, whenever a site is developed, generally the state laws say you have to keep your water on site. So that turns into, you'll see in a lot of contemporary developments, a pond, or in a lot of areas like downtown here, they're actually underground in a chamber. So there is an element of when you develop a site, no matter the size, if it's in site plan review and over half an acre, you have to meet those current standards, which means you have to keep some amount of water on the property. These laws, I believe, are from the 70s or 80s. A lot of the city of Kalamazoo was built before that. So something that happens in that multi-layered site plan review, and one of the most challenging aspects is stormwater compliance. So in doing that, a development, there is a certain amount based on the size and the pavement that has to be kept in the property before it can go off to the city storm systems. And that often involves a chamber to keep all the sediments, or if something gets in there, it's a way to be seen. So there's a lot of nuance and design that happens in that through site plan review. And it's one of those quiet operational things where the idea is piece by piece, we're keeping more water on site. And I often think of it as another challenge for a city like Kalamazoo. We were built before these contemporary standards existed. So we have flooding and risks related. And that's a long explanation, but it is a definitely detailed part of the city's site plan review process.
Just not to get too deep in the weeds on this, but related to stormwater, there's also an expectation in the development process that this stormwater system be annually inspected and maintained to make sure it's functioning as designed. Is that correct? Is that something the city enforces?
Yes, it is. What you're referencing is a stormwater maintenance agreement. Those ponds that you see, you don't want them to get full of sediment or have something go wrong with it. If it's not holding the water, it's not doing its job. So one of the innocuous little many paperwork items of site plan review is to prepare and before the development's done, make sure we have a recorded stormwater agreement. And those can become really useful if we have a large clogged chamber. It outlines for the city who to contact, who's responsible for it. So it's one of those small little stormwater things that I think takes quietly a big action on stormwater.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Any other questions for Commissioner Prado?
I was just going to ask if anybody thought it would be helpful to hear directly from Mr. Bogan at all. Or, I mean, I know we covered a lot last meeting, so I don't want.
All right, well, thank you. I think we're set with you right now. Our developer, Jamari Bogan, welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners. Good evening, Mayor Anderson and City Manager Ritzma. First, I want to say thank you to our neighbors for their concern. When I built my first project, Zone 32, we didn't have many neighbors. So it was a very unique process, but this process, I have felt that our neighbors are truly concerned about this project and how it will come to fruition, and we are taking that concern here pretty deeply. But I want to make sure that I share this, that this block, which is now called Block M, was reimagined by our largest employer around 2016. And so our largest employer, Bronson Hospital, the Edison Neighborhood Association, Vine Neighborhood Association, the City of Kalamazoo, and Local Initiative Support Corporation, which is LISC, all came together to think about what this area could be. So Block M is not just this corner, but there's more land here at play. And so a part of that visioning was a 5-story mixed-use building. And today we stand here in 2025, so that's now 9 years of community outreach and thought and finally trying to find the right developer who truly cared about community development to bring this to fruition. And so today stands Bogan Developments and Kalamazoo Forward Ventures to bring this project to fruition. And so since we've taken the reins to lead this project, we have made one of our pillars of our guiding principles that we talk about in every single project meeting, community engagement, right? So we truly believe this is not a buzzword, this is what we do. And so on April 29th, we had a community charrettes. We've met with the Vine Executive Director, Steve Walsh, twice. I have had conversations and I've reached out to both Karen and Stephanie via email this weekend because I knew they were having an event this Saturday to talk to our neighbors and wanted to know what came out of that so that we can now have my team come back and meet with them at a later date. And we have not got an email back, but once we do, we will set a meeting to talk about what came out of that meeting so we can add or talk about how we can add those features to our project. So this is not, we're not here to play games. We're really for real about this kind of work. And on top of that, we have received a letter of support from the Edison Edison Neighborhood Association. And we'll be speaking before the board of the Vine Neighborhood Association on June 17th. So we have a full plan to do community engagement. We will do more. And we are fully committed to bringing this project forth. It will have missing middle housing. It will have a gym. It will have a restaurant concept. And we'll have an early learning center. So we're going to bring business attraction. We're going to bring housing that has not been in this area while removing blight and the neighborhood liquor store. So that's what we're going to do. We want to lead with action, and we're going to also lead with engagement. So thank you guys. If you guys have any questions, I'm here. But we're going to continue to show up, do the work, and act on it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bogan. Questions for Mr. Bogan at this time? Commission? I see none. Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Prado, do you have a question? No, okay. Thank you, sir. Now is the opportunity for public comments on this item. Speakers will each have 3 minutes for their comments Please come forward, state your name, where you live in the city. Hi, Toby.
Toby Hannah Davies again. I am a big fan of Jamari Bogans, and that has nothing to do with football. I know this is weird, but my education never included anything about football, even though I lived in Ann Arbor for 22 years. I'm a fan of Jamari Bogan because of the beautiful housing he's created already, the affordable housing that he's done. I got to see inside Zone 32 on the north side in view of the old Gibson Guitar building, and inside the child care program, the YMCA child care. And I love that this new project on Burdick and Vine and Burdick will be including child care and be so multi-use. It looks to me that several of the houses that are on this block are really dilapidated and can't be saved. There's also a vacant lot in the Food Max building that has been vacant for a while. But there are two buildings that look to me like they are in good shape and hopefully could be moved and used as infill, the way the city has done wonderful infill with KNHS, building new houses that fit in vacant lots. I hope that any buildings that are in good enough shape to be moved can be moved, not necessarily very far away. And I want to say that 5 stories isn't really very high compared to the buildings nearby, and it's nowhere near as tall as Skyview, which is in sight of this lot. I don't think it's really out of proportion for the neighborhood, and I know from seeing the other projects and knowing the ones that Jamari Bogan is also working on currently, that it will be beautifully designed. And when he just said that he's serious about getting neighborhood input, I believe him completely. I think that's the kind of person he is. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to comment on this item? Seeing no one, I will now close the public hearing. The recommended action is a motion to adopt the ordinance, which is a zoning change. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Cooney.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Wilson. Discussion, commissioners. Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you, Mayor. I hear the passion in Mr. Bogan's voice. I have visited the first property, but there is something to say about losing green spaces. It is going to really affect our climate and our environment. And so is there a way that some green initiatives can be also included in that? And I hear you, Mr. Bogan, when you say you're willing to listen, but what I heard more prevalent was that you all are going to continue moving forward regardless. And so I hope that you all won't placate the residents, but that you will really take to heart what they're saying and really try to work something out in a way that they feel valued, and we also still get housing that is desperately needed. The second thing that I want to say is when we talk about affordability, what we are lacking in this community is affordability for folks and families that are 50% and below. What I hear all the time in our community is 120% and below. That is not really reaching down deep enough to the folks that live in those neighborhoods and that can get access to that. They will not be able to access it. And so those are my concerns when I hear community input and what they have to say. Yes, we need housing on every level, but we need somebody that's willing to invest and put housing out that families who desperately need it. There are families who are trying to get their children back, but there's no housing available for them, and they're working 2 and 3 jobs. And so I just want to put that out there in the universe that there has to be a way that we can get creative and that we can be bold and begin to take care of our most vulnerable residents within this city.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Other discussion? Commissioner Pradel.
I'm going to be abstaining from this vote because Jamari is on my board of directors at Community Homeworks. But I wanted to share one of the things that I know about Jamari as a person and as a person who's doing work in the community, and I want to share this to lend to the voices of people who spoke up and have reached out to us as well, is that, not to say that there are good developers and bad developers, but there are definitely people who are motivated by money, and there are people who are motivated by community. And what I know about Jamari is that he is laser focused 100% on community. And the other thing that I've learned about Jamari over the 5 or 6 years that I've known Jamari is that that he's also somebody that sees challenges and wants to make opportunities out of them to solve challenging issues in our community. And so, I can already just see the wheels turning in Jamari Bogan's head, where it's like, okay, I'm hearing all these things. How can I take this into account, think it through, engage with people to talk about it? Because, I know that it is sometimes easy just to say this is the way it's going to happen and it's going to happen, but I know that one of the cornerstone tenets of who Jamari is very much relationship building in this community. So I guess my advice would be, as this process goes forward, continue to stay engaged. Don't separate in camps. When you're talking about wanting to create that quality of life, find those opportunities together to find how you can enrich each other's quality of life in this work together to try to solve these community challenges. And, again, just to go back to about that community issues mindset, in the first development in Zone 32, one of the very special things about that was also trying to address the childcare shortage in our community. And again, here's an opportunity where there's that opportunity to do that, which in every one of our neighborhoods, we hear from people, including the Vine neighborhood, about how critically that's needed for people, because so many people, whether it's Vine or Northside, and really our core neighborhoods, are sometimes driving 20, 30 minutes to get to their kid to a safe, reliable childcare facility, and having to pay through the roof to do that, which makes it really hard when you're trying to get off to work, you're working those 2 jobs and trying to travel in the winter. And so that is solving a very big issue that we're facing in our community. And so when it comes to things like green space, when it comes to things like lighting, when it comes to things like having barriers and that sort of thing, just continue those conversations. I just would implore not to get into camps and just assume who a person is, because I can promise you this is not your atypical developer. This is a person who really cares a lot about community, and so I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Commissioner Pringle. Other discussion, Commissioners? Commissioner Cooney?
I think what Commissioner Hoffman talked about is very real with the need for low-income housing. And I'm sure that Mr. Bogan wants to address that the best way he can. That's not easy. That's a huge problem. And it needs to be faced. At the same time, I think what the young lady from Rose Street said is important. This could be a transforming thing for the neighborhood. And I'm already hearing that Mr. Bogan wants to bring people together and talk about how it can be that. So I'm definitely going to endorse this tonight. I think he's got a track record of caring for the community. He's not solving the real problem that you're talking about, but I'm not sure that he can. I'm sure it's beyond him to do that. But I think this project is important and it should go through.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooney. Any other discussion? Vice Mayor Hess.
Sure, agree with you, Commissioner Cooney, and Commissioner Pradel. I do know Jamari Bogan as an upstanding, honest individual who's got community in his heart, and definitely I appreciate his willingness to engage with the neighborhoods and with especially with the Vine neighborhood, and now with the opportunity for the folks who do live in the Vine to visit that meeting and to be heard and to come up with something greater than any of us ever thought. So this really could be, like we heard earlier for another project, a transformative project for those neighborhoods, for downtown, for the Vine, and for Edison. I encourage us to continue that conversation, and we only do that by shifting by changing the zoning tonight. So I will be in favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. All right, appreciate it. Hey, just a couple of comments which are actually somewhat tangential to this, I guess, but, Commissioner Cooney and Commissioner Hoffman just bringing this up and talking about, where the greatest need is, and obviously we hear about that every city commission meeting. And as it relates to housing, here is the pure, hard, cold, cruel truth that you cannot build a development that can support itself either on the development side or on the operating side, collecting rents at 50% that are affordable to people at 50% and below. It is just not possible. How do we do that in this country? Right now, we subsidize tenant rents. If you're going to look anywhere where the rent is affordable, there's a tenant subsidy built into it. Unfortunately, that happens to be the way it is. Not that we can't figure out creative ways to do rental, tenant subsidy. As a matter of fact, we have seen a model, and this is happening over at the Legacy development that is being done at Mount Zion, where there is, in that particular case, an endowment being set aside, which will then serve to subsidize tenant rents so that the project itself is viable. There is a local, creative response to that challenging issue. But related to the bigger picture, I guess I'll just say one more thing. The most affordable housing in this country is created now. The only real program, it's not brownfield TIF. That doesn't get you decent affordability. The only national program that does it is low-income housing tax credits. And even in those developments, the number of very affordable units is very modest. And that is a creative solution where literally those developers have virtually no mortgage to pay back because the tax credit serves as the equity investment, diminishing the need, for the most part, for a mortgage. And for the most affordable units that are available in low-income housing tax credits, the only way that works is MISTA assigns some of their tenant-based vouchers to a number of units so that those units can, those tenants and those units can generate a sufficient rent to keep the project viable. So it's a big, big problem. Unfortunately, if you look at the HUD budget that was just proposed, anybody can go online and look at it right now. It's just line by line. You can look at it. This is obviously the first step in the budget process for October 1, 2026. President proposes, goes to the House, goes to the Senate. They're going to work something out. There is a reduction in where essence all this comes from the feds in terms of tenant-based rental subsidies and that line item. Simple to look at, you can see that. So presumably, without further communication with our local reps and whatever they are willing to do for us when it gets to the House and the Senate, we could see a diminishment in the number of housing choice vouchers, project-based subsidies, the kinds of assistance that actually allow for a very low-income person to rent. Sorry to bring that all up. It's not exactly, we're kind of way off topic here on the zoning, but in light of all those challenges, I do appreciate we have local developers trying to do a good job, and so I will be supportive of this. Clerk Bowen, please call the roll.
Commissioner Pradel.
Abstain.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hess.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The motion passes. Now we are down to our consent agenda. Manager Ritzma.
All right, we have the following items requested for approval. First is approval of a contract extension with K&B Asphalt for crack seal of city streets in the amount of $129,682.50. Next is the approval of a contract with Unique Paving Materials Corporation for asphalt patching materials in the amount of $278,960. Next is the approval of a 36-month contract extension with Constellation New Energy Gas Division, LLC, for natural gas to heat selected city facilities in the amount of $825,000. Next is the approval of a contract with Hoffman Brothers Incorporated for the replacement of water main on Porter Street from Kalamazoo Avenue to Ransom Street in the amount of $827,800.50. Next is the adoption of a resolution approving Act 381 Brownfield Plan for the redevelopment project at 234 and 238 East Michigan Avenue. Next is the approval of updated bylaws for the Community Development Act Advisory Committee to align with the new consolidated plan. Next is the approval of updates to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Citizen Participation Plan to align with the new consolidated plan. Next is the approval of a temporary grading and public utility easement with Kalamazoo Valley Community College for sanitary sewer main as part of the John Street Improvement Construction Project. And finally, approval of a purchase agreement with Jaya Krishnan for the purchase of 510 Lawrence Street in the amount of $64,240.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to approve items 1 through 8 and postpone item 9 until June 16th, 2025, and authorize the city manager to sign all related documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, just point of information on G9, that one, though, is postponed until June 16th, correct?
Correct. Did I say that wrong? Okay, thank you.
Support.
Motion made by Commissioner Hoffman, supported by Vice Mayor Hess. Thanks for, if I misread that, thank you, Commissioner Pradel. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hess.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
We are now at the regular agenda. City Manager Ritzma.
Item H1 is approval of a sole source purchase with Madden Fabrication for a Portland Loo restroom in the amount of $196,955.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. I see Director Baker walking up here. I presume there is a...
He has a brief presentation on this. Just by way of context, this is an opportunity for us to acquire the Portland Loo and lock in on current pricing with the idea that it would be located sometime later this year. So we wanted to get the pricing locked in, so Director Baker will further explain all of that.
Thank you, Director Baker. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, City Commissioners. And we've just got a brief presentation to kind of talk about this subject and introduce our concept for project delivery, if you will. We're going to provide some background, talk about some of these locations, and then provide some perspective on that project schedule that the City Manager referenced. Just some background. Back in 2024, $600,000 was allocated by the City Commission to provide additional public restroom facilities downtown. Potential locations were selected based on a number of criteria, including one, they had to be city property, and that we had to have access to water, sewer, and electric connectivity to kind of provide the necessary power and utilities for that restroom structure. We've been pretty far into the design. We've got a design design concept in plan. We had a site selected actually at the City Hall location here along South Street, along the east property line of City Hall. However, that area is not within our ambassador service area. So there's another lens that we have to also look through besides just the utilities, is being able to service and provide maintenance and support to that restroom facility. So that project location really is a fundamental aspect of that design piece. That project location informs our design, and we'll get a little bit more into this later, but each design location is different. So if we have, say, a site on Water Street, that might require a different utility setup than a site on Level Street. And so those changes are important to the design, and those changes must be considered before we put the project out to bid. Speaking of sites and evaluating those sites, we've kind of got a two-tiered approach. First is we certainly understand the need within the community, and so we have, first I'm going to highlight 3 locations that we're going to refer to as temporary locations. These temporary locations are going to be served with porta-john facilities from June 6th. These are all scheduled to go operational on June 6th, and they'll continue to be operational through November. Those sites can give us information in terms of need and resources on some of these other permanent sites that I'll talk about, and we can help to evaluate that through ambassador work orders and overall response that we see through the community. So one of the sites is 510 North Burdick Street. Another site is Bronson Park on the Academy Street side of it, just north of Bronson Park. The third location is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Park. There's a box, I don't know if you can see that on your screen, we've got kind of a box that denotes the general area of where we plan to have that. Transitioning now to these permanent locations, we describe these all as alternatives or alternates because we're not quite sure which location would best serve that need. So we've got a site on Edwards Street, surface lot adjacent to Bates Alley. We've got another potential site on Kalamazoo Mall. It's actually where Eleanor Street goes through, but it's 252 North Kalamazoo Mall. This is adjacent to public safety station just around the corner. We've got another site. This is a Level Street site adjacent to alley area just west of the Epic Ramp, 126 East South Street. And then a fourth location, which is Water Street in Lot 9. So that's where that current Portland Loop is now. Talking about that site selection process, I alluded to that earlier. The Public Services team right now is working on design ticket utility layout. So we're taking every one of those sites and we're creating a drawing that's going to show all the different utility layers and give us kind of a better understanding of the overall degree of difficulty for each one of those sites from kind of a easy, medium, hard perspective from utility connection. We're then working with a broader team to include city staff, Downtown Economic Growth Authority, Southwest Michigan First, to evaluate those sites, to better understand how that fits in with the community, including talking to some of our property owners and businesses. It's our goal to have this kind of information packaged and ready for the DDA beginning at their July 21st board meeting. Not that there's going to be a decision made at that point. I think it's important to understand that it's going to take, I might have broke my clicker here. Can you advance the slides, Clerk Borland?
Yeah.
All right, there we go, thanks, sorry about that. So it's certainly going to take some time to select the sites. The information obtained from the temporary locations is going to be very helpful. It's going to provide not only anecdotal data, but empirical data as well in terms of, are we addressing the need with additional restroom facilities? Are folks using those areas? And how does that relate to the overall footprint of all those other sites that we talked about? So that site selection, we don't have a set end date on when that's going to be. I think we'll be working through those partners mentioned, the DAGA group, Southwest Michigan First, as well as city staff to kind of carry that along. But once that's selected, then we can kind of move through this incremental project schedule. This is where we outline 37 weeks of project schedule to get us towards that goal of implementing the Portland Loo. Now, if this recommendation before the City Commission is acted upon tonight, we could see arrival of that Portland Loo as soon as October 6th. So that's kind of, we're setting that ball in motion, so to speak, or we're recommending to do so. And then once that arrives, we're hopeful that some of these other items we're able to kind of work towards. Next slide, please. We're now, just kind of showing you some, additional progress schedule items. These things are all based on 37 weeks to complete all the work once we've made that decision of site selection. And so that site selection really is critical. It does inform what kind of foundation we use, what quantities are for curb and sidewalk, what kind of utility connections we have to make, where we're bringing in power. Are we bringing in power from an existing facility like a ramp that's already metered? Do we have to drop a meter base? Do we have to bring in underground power? Is there an above ground power line that we can get onto? So that all that information informs that design. So in terms of next steps, really big item for us is going to be that site selection. There's going to be some homework that our teams are going to be doing then based on that. We'll then go back out to bid. Likely based on our estimates, that bid would come back to the City Commission for award and approval. And then depending on where we're at in this process, when we get to that point, will inform us on where we're at going forward. Next slide, please. That concludes the presentation, and happy to answer any questions the Commission may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Baker. Questions, Commission? Commissioner Cooney?
It's hard for me to get in my head that it's going to take 9 months to put that up. We can't do better than that? Is it? I don't understand that. I mean, you explain all the details, all the problems that are there, but are we going to have these other porta-johns in place until that happens?
So I think, first of all, thank you, Commissioner Cooney. I certainly appreciate that concept. It's going to take 18 weeks for the Portland Loo to get here. They've got to make. It's not sitting on the shelf. It's put together and made when we order it. So that's a process. And so what we're actually recommending tonight to move forward on that action, so that clock can start. So we can get the steel coming. And when it shows up, it's like something you buy from IKEA. It's a bunch of fabricated steel on a semi that then has to be built, in place by local fabricators and steel contractors. We've got to dig up a road, connect the sewer to the unit, tear out all the curb and gutter sidewalk. We got to connect a water line from the other side of the street all the way over to it, tear up all the curb and gutter and sidewalk. We've got to bring in power from somewhere underground. And in our downtown urban core, we've got a whole lot of underground telephone. We've got one of the major AT&T long lines locations right here, the corner of Rose and Level Street. And so we've got, literally all the phone lines from Southwest Michigan, including phone lines to Grand Rapids, routed through downtown Kalamazoo. We've got to dig through all that kind of stuff and not hit one, not cut one, not break one. Didn't mention gas. That's something that's going to be in the ground as well. So we've got a lot of work to do, but we want to make sure we're we're moving as fast as possible. Another alternative, and we looked at this, we talked about this, was that we just focus on site selection and we just get that done, and then once that's done, then we go out to bid and then order the Portland Loo at that point. That would then take 18 more weeks from where we're at. And so another thing, and on Friday, and I don't know how late anybody was up watching the news, but the president announced an additional 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum. So this is Portland Loo. We've had several quotes for it, and so quotes only good for 30 days, and we talk to those good folks almost every week, and just getting each other updated on where we're at and if we're ready to place an order or not. So the quote that the commission has is good. It's good through this meeting, is my understanding. And so we're, if approved, we'll order it and we'll lock that price in. And so this is made here in America. We understand that, but with some of those tariffs, we're seeing that as that demand increases for U.S. goods, then so does cost. And so it's a bit of a double-edged sword on that. So there's a whole lot riding on our next steps, our site selection. We've got to get that done, but if we can get that done before the arrival of the Portland Loo on October 6th, we can kind of accelerate through some of these other steps. And it still takes time to get through that, but I think being able to order the Portland Loo ahead of getting the contractor here is going to help us kind of maximize those timelines. That being said, those temporary locations are currently programmed through November, and I think we can kind of see how things are going in November. If we need to extend them, that's a bit of a temperature dependent thing. Sometimes we've had some soft winters early on in November, December. That might be, we might be able to do that. We might not be able to do that. So I just want to be honest that we might not be done with the Portland Loo construction and installation before we have to demobilize some of those temporary sites. But I think your question was right on point with probably many questions that many folks would have on this topic. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, commissioners? Commissioner Pradel.
Director Baker, I want to thank the team for looking at the temporary locations to hopefully have some learnings from those as well. They're not, obviously they do a great job of making sure that there are sources throughout downtown, the downtown corridor, to make sure people have an option to use the restroom. But what things can we learn from those temporary locations?
Sure, there's a lot to learn from them. Some of the basic elements are just the overall usage of the sites in place. How many times are they being visited by folks? And we gain that information. We learn that information through the servicing. So the contracts. I didn't really talk much about the contracts for the temporary locations, but those are going to be serviced as well. So we'll have those providers providing that service, and we'll be able to inform some knowledge on the overall use of that. There's also going to be some smaller dumpsters, something between a 3-yard and an 8-yard at those locations. So folks know that, or we know that where there's restroom facilities, oftentimes that's a good spot to unpack some chow or manage some other needs that you might have, and so you might generate some trash or some garbage or something like that. So those are going to be serviced as well, and that's going to also inform us. In addition to that, our ambassador program folks are doing a whole list of work order items throughout the entire community. And as they're doing that work, that information's kind of reported and categorized of what work they've done and where they've done it. And so our hope is that to see perhaps a change in the work patterns or the work products that those ambassador folks are doing in those work orders and reporting, and so we can see if the temporary locations are changing some of the overall need and workflow of the ambassadors. So between kind of those those two aspects, we'll be able to get some information from it. And then the human element, talking to our neighbors, talking to business owners, talking to property owners, to seeing, hey, is this helping? What are you hearing from the community members? So there's just that anecdotal aspect of it as well.
So you could almost argue it's sort of like a pilot run to see how it's going, basically, what we're learning from it as well. And my understanding is, as well, is from the Downtown Ambassadors, you mentioned this, but one of the leading things that they are doing, so you can actually monitor this and track the numbers, is picking up human waste. So again, if you put these pilot locations out, you actually have a data point that you can look at to say, hey, are those numbers going down because people now have an option to use the restroom rather than going outdoors. So that's one thing that I thought was interesting as well. So
sure.
Thank you.
Other questions for Director Baker? Yeah, Commissioner Prater.
I guess another question would be so you notated some permanent site ideas, and I think there were the 3 or 4.
Yeah, I'll go back through, and my clicker works now, so I can show you those.
But just in terms of, say you're going down this exploratory phase, and you get to it and you realize, hey, we need to go back to the drawing board because these sites don't work. I mean, are there other options if those don't work, I guess? Whether it be just, feedback, or whether or if you just get to the engineering components of it, looking at it and saying, gosh, we need to go back to the drawing board. Is that a potential? And if so, what would happen then?
Certainly, and I think you're seeing that. We're here before you today because we had a site selected that we felt met all the needs from a utility perspective. In fact, we had to open space in the circuit breaker panels of City Hall to provide power kind of out the back door in a set of conduits that already existed. So we were really excited from an engineering and utility perspective of that site, here on Level Street. But that site didn't overlay well with the Ambassador Service Area. So that was a bit of us kind of coming back together, kind of realign and refocus on, what the overall needs of the site need to look at beyond just those utility connections. So I think that certainly that's a possibility, and that's a possibility with every project. It's not unusual for projects to have to, restart that design process several times over again. In fact, a lot of times we refer to the design process as an iteration, meaning you're gonna go at it, you're gonna follow that design, get to an answer, and then check that answer against the commission, the community, staff, and you might have to go back and make some corrections. What's really unique about this project, and we're so excited to have this funded and have that funding from the City Commission, is that we received that funding before we actually kind of started the project. Most projects take anywhere from 5 or more years to implement. A lot of our projects, and there's several coming forward to the Commission on June 16th. We've got several water utility projects. At least one of those projects was handed to me when I was a deputy director over 10 years ago, and that had been in the department for a number of years. And so it's not unusual for staff to have really worked out the kinks, so to speak, on a project, so that when it comes forward for funding requests, we're kind of ready to go. Again, we're very excited to have the funding provided to us, but we haven't spent those many years, kind of working out the kinks and really kind of finalizing the ideal location. So I think that's certainly a possibility. It is a possibility that we might need to come back and identify some other sites. Maybe we can do that as a team. We don't necessarily have to come back to the City Commission, but we've got kind of that overall project schedule, and if we've got to add a site and evaluate that, maybe some other site works better. I will say, broadly speaking, we really want the footprint has to be on city property. And, we can't put this on somebody else's property. So.
For the temporary locations as well, those aren't necessarily term limited. So if say the project takes slightly longer than the 37 weeks or something, those could persist longer. And then those can move periodically if we needed them to as well, correct?
Correct. And, in my response to Commissioner Cooney, we talked about November, the weather starts to turn, things might not support, the porta-john units might freeze if we were to leave them out. So we might have to bring them back over the winter period, and then if we haven't identified a site or we're not far enough along in that 37-week project schedule and spring is coming, we might need to come back out with some more temporary units. But I think you're spot on in terms of we want to address the need now while we continue to kind of work through the design elements and most importantly the site selection elements.
Commissioner Wilson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Director Baker. I had a question. Just out of curiosity, what was the estimated incremental cost for each additional bathroom, if we explored that? To Commissioner Cooney's point, one bathroom in 37 weeks seems a bit much, but if we were able to do 2 or 3 in that same time span, that might be a little more effective.
Certainly, that's a great question. I think in terms of if they were all packaged together, if we were ordering 2 tonight or 3 tonight, those would still have the same 18 weeks, so we could get, probably a full order. I would imagine we could get 2 in 18 weeks. And then once they get here, if we implemented them, we could probably get 2 implemented, something similar. It'd be longer than that. The longest thing in the schedule is just kind of that construction phase of getting the street torn up, connecting all those utilities. Now, if they were sitting right next to each other, put in the same footprint, that would kind of fast track that schedule. And that's one, in fact, it wasn't designed this way because this installation was done several years ago, but that Water Street Lot 9, if several years ago that was implemented as like 2 units right next to each other, that would have sped up that process. Not now, because we would, if that was selected, we'd have to kind of dig everything up.
Thanks. I'm just trying to get in front of potential pilot results where we say, oh man, it would have been really great to have 2 or 3 in these locations, but we only have 1.
Yeah.
So just curious. Thank you.
Sure. If I could speak to the funding aspect of it, the proposal in front of you, I'm just going to round off and call it $200,000. It's actually just a little bit less than that. Depending on where the site goes, we could see construction installation costs in the neighborhood of $150,000. So if we put that together, we're in a ballpark of $350,000. Our budget's $600,000, so we've got some room there, but we're not feeling very comfortable about like 2 separate units away from each other. We're not confident that we could deliver 2 units at 2 discrete locations under the budget amount of $600,000.
Yeah, but you got to save room for contingency, right?
Certainly.
Thanks.
Vice Mayor Hess.
Director Baker, are the temporary porta-johns covered in the $600,000? Is that what's going to cover those?
Correct. Yeah, correct. That's going to be, I believe, out of that same bucket.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions, Commissioners? All right, thank you for all the good discussion. Thank you, Director Baker. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this item? That's item H1. If so, please come forward, state your name, whether you live in the city. You have 3 minutes. Seeing no one, Commissioners, the recommended action is a motion to approve. Is there a motion? Motion made by Commissioner Hoffman.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Wilson. Further discussion at this point, Commissioners? All right, Vice Mayor Hess.
Just a comment. When Director Baker was talking, he mentioned the ambassadors, and in the presentation, there was also mention of being in the ambassador area. I don't know y'all know what they do, but they are instrumental in keeping our downtown up, and I want to give them a shout out at this point. They're always there. They're always downtown, doing their work in all seasons, outdoors, and normally with a smile on their face. And I really appreciate the work of the ambassadors and their willingness to be in this project with us.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Praedel?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I just, I think if we kind of reel back the clock a little bit about where all this started in this conversation and budgeting, it's just, I think, 2022, the decriminalization ordinance, and you'll all probably remember very much the very strong, distinctive opinions that we heard from people. And the one commonality of whether you were an individual who was bringing it up and reaching out to us because you're thinking about the dignity of every person, human being that's on the street, and making sure that they have a safe and private place to use the restroom, or whether you were a person because you lived downtown or you had a business, they were both asking us, and better yet, demanding from us that we do something about this issue. And now you reel the clock forward to 3 years. I wish this, we were at this point 3 years ago. But nonetheless, I think this is another example that I'm grateful to administration, to Director Baker and his team, that we said we were going to do something, and we did it. And I'm also grateful that it was heard and tried to make movement where there's a temporary solution in the meantime for those 37 weeks, that we find a way to make sure that there's accessible restrooms to people in that meantime. So although you wish things had happened sooner than they had, I'm still grateful that we followed through with what we said we were going to accomplish and do. So I thank the administration, I thank Director Baker for figuring out how to resolve this, and also for community for continuing to keep us focused on this to make sure that we make sure that we got it done. So that's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Praedel. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Borland, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Hess.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Praedel.
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The motion passes. Next, reports and legislation. City Manager Ritzma.
Yeah, I just want to highlight our communications team under the leadership of Mike Smith, and then we have Neil Conway and Amanda Cockcroft that are in that department as well. And the city has earned a national honor it's called the Blue Pencil and Gold Screen Awards, and it's for our City View newsletter. We received third place in the publication category. That award is given out by the National Association of Government Communicators, so congratulations, Mike and the team. That City View is distributed or mailed out every other month to households, and so I'm sure everyone's eagerly awaiting the next issue. So that's all I have this evening, Your Honor.
Appreciate it, Manager Ritzma. I just also wanted to say an opportunity to congratulate Mike and team on the work. Great job. And sometimes the PIO is a position that kind of operates in the shadows and turns out those communications, but Mike has been not only working on trying to improve our general communications, but has also stepped out for interviews when the need has arisen, and very ably handled those. I think you were on with Ken Lamphere not too long ago about Bike Week, and it was I really appreciate the fact that now we have a public information officer, which not so long ago we didn't have, and I wasn't available for that, and it's really nice to be able to have somebody that you can ask who can step right in and take care of that, so appreciate you, sir. So I have a little proposal here. We got, I'm sorry, City Manager, anything else? All right. We do have a topic that could last a little while. It might be brief. We have a very able subcommittee that's been working on our unfinished business, which is next on our agenda. But for all those who have patiently waited for this, I'm going to take a little bio break. I don't know if anyone else wants to before we enter this last phase. So if you want to try to keep going, or if you want to take a 5-minute break and come back, that's what I'm proposing. It's up to you all. I'd like to hear a presentation, but, right.
Take them. I remember that. Hey, man. Good, good, good. You too. You got your calendar. Let's get on your This Friday? Sure. You want to meet at Berries? Berries? Berries.
Listen, I got the number on this guy right here. I won't refuse it.
Sure.
All right. So, graduated from high school.
Yeah. Jeez,
What's she gonna do? What's her plan next year?
She wants to take a gap year, and then she's applied to this program at the Family Health Center. It's like a dental hygienist position. They're a trainer for like 8 months, and then she gets paid during that time, but then she'll get a 3-year contract to work at the Family Health Center.
It's kind of like free education.
Yeah, but you got to commit to 3 years. So, but if she flakes out, then she's got to pay the training back.
Good incentive to not flake out.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I want to go up more fishing, man. We go for a week and I'll start in Saturday.
When? I better go with this. You can do a pike. They need to put a line on.
Yeah, it was first we started the state,
You said that. For government? Mayor first.
Right. Oh, thank you.
I'm going to show you the new year. This shit's too old. Major shit. I'm the shit from total shit. gave it. Yeah, on the rock to Mill Street, everywhere.
Vice Mayor? All right, thank you so much for allowing me that. I'll do a public service announcement right now. One of the foundational principles of health is staying appropriately hydrated, so don't give that up. Now we are on our agenda here to unfinished business, and we have a subcommittee that's been ably beginning the work of our search to replace our current city manager. Subcommittee team, how do you want to get this started?
Can we call forward James Henderson, our current Director of Human Resources, who's been helping us with this process, and he can kind of get us going and then talk about the three who we might invite on the 16th.
Welcome, sir. Good to have you here.
Yeah, good to be here. I'm not used to being up this late. Well, you know, this has really been an exciting process. Basically, we put the RFP out, and on the 20th, we were able to open those and to score them. We actually had 10 people or 10 firms that put in a mix. there was a mix of local and national firms that the subcommittee were able to score. And basically, one of the criteria that we had for the ones that when we put the RFP out, some of the concerns that were brought up earlier, we really wanted to address those when it comes to diversity, inclusion, whatever the case may be. All of these firms basically have some form of commitment to that. So whatever firm that's chosen, I think we can feel pretty safe that this is a guiding principle or something that they really believe in. Basically, I think from this meeting, the subcommittee were able to score those. We cut it down to 3, and I think those, I don't know if we want to name those 3, or, okay, we want to name the 3 firms that are the finalists are CPS HR, SGR, and Raftalus. Hope I pronounced that correctly. It's a southern firm, and I shouldn't have had much trouble with that. But those are the 3, and basically where we go from here, after, I think on the 16th, on our next meeting, they will, at some form, address the commission with presentations for their firm, and then we'll just go from there.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate you facilitating this process with our team. Just for some feedback on this, so you put out a request for proposals that comes from city purchasing, right? End up 10 respondents, maybe 9 qualified out of those 10. Then what was the process with the team in terms of scoring and creating a scoring matrix and how that piece worked out?
Right. The commission, the subcommittee were given a rubric to score those, and basically those scores, they were able to narrow that down to the top 3 that we felt like we would bring to the full commission to give a presentation, and then out of those top 3, hopefully we will get a firm to get going on this.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you. Any comments from team here? Yes.
Yeah, James, thank you. So just so the public knows, the rubric included rating categories of professional credentials and experience conducting similar search assignments, like size of city and so on, experience with recruiting diverse pools of applicants, the specific experience of the proposed team leader of the search team, and all of those were given a category weight of 2. So every score that they got was multiplied by 2. So those were important in our search. The stability and resources of the firm, the satisfaction, and that was 1.5, that was weighted at 1.5, and then the satisfaction of recent clients, and the financial proposal, and the quality of responsiveness of the proposal, like the timeliness, and can we get this done in a certain timeline. And those were both rated at, scaled at 1. So we all, the 3 of us, I and Commissioner Priel and Commissioner Wilson, went through each of the packets many times. We did spend a lot of time doing this, and I think we are pretty much in agreement of the top 3. And I should say we had help and legal advice from Attorney Leal as well. Comments?
I can jump off of that. Yes, just echoing what Vice Mayor said. So I guess I'll speak for me specifically. Some of the categories that I paid most attention to was making sure that not only do these firms make a concerted effort to recruit diversely, but they're also not just checking a box. They're also making sure they get the right candidate for that job. So although at this point in the search we haven't reached out to make those personal phone calls yet, that's coming up in the next steps. But I did pay close attention to the tenure of those candidates, so just to make sure that they're placing great candidates in those roles. Yeah, if you want to go for that one.
And for transparency's sake as well, in terms of one of the things is there were organizations that said, hey, they had a commitment to DEI, or they had more equitable approaches to how they do their searches. But it was like, where's the proof in the pudding, right? Tell me how that's manifesting itself. And so SGR had 33% of candidates recruited were women, 31% of candidates people of color. They were transparent, provided that percentage of what they're seeing for candidates. For Raftellus, 38% of searches completed were women, 21% people of color. For CPS-HR, they indicated 50% were of candidates who were placed were women or BIPOC members in the last 3 years. So again, there were a number of organizations that said so, but like, show me, you know. And so those were actual, we could actually provide in the notes to say these were organizations that not only said that they do it, but gave us the outcomes as well of doing that work.
And I will say that there is a difference in the financial proposal for each one of those. And I think when we hear from them, we'll be able to say, yes, they're worth it, or yes, we'll go with this firm. Yeah, I'm confident in the top three that we have identified from all of those. And I'm curious, James, can you tell us what the next step would be for us? Would you contact those firms and make arrangements for them to come on the 16th?
I don't mind doing that. I don't think we've discussed the minutia of that yet, but that's very within HR sphere, so I'd be glad to do that.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks away, and if people are going to make travel plans to be here in person,
right.
Or could they, is it possible to call in, like, we would like to have them in person. Mm-hmm. We would like to have them in person.
Okay, that makes sense. So I will get on that tomorrow because again we need to give them as much time as possible to make plans to get here because again I know that CPS they're out of California, SGR is out of Texas, and the other one is I think North Carolina or somewhere like that. So there's some pretty good distances.
And some of them do have reps locally,
right?
So they may be able to do that.
Yeah, Commissioner Cradle.
A couple other things I know was during the public comment was it weighed about the pricing, and the low end of a price was $22,500. The higher end was $62,000. And to be fully honest, I mean, there wasn't necessarily that much you could tell from process-wise from that price range. And so it didn't really weigh that heavily in terms of how we ranked. You know, it might if it looks like the person just like whipped together kind of a weak-looking proposal and they're wanting $60-some thousand. But for the most part, the ones that were ranked seemed to be pretty consistently in a range that we thought was appropriate and what you know, what our professional staff who have experience in this work were advising us was a normal range to pay for this work as well.
Right, just to give you a little context, I know that when I was involved in a city manager search in Bozeman, Montana back in 2019 or 20, that was the same range, $25,000 to $30,000. So that's really encouraging to see that the price hasn't jumped up that much.
I have a question for Clerk Borling. In terms of process of the meeting, how would this go? Would these firms...
So let's just stop. Just before we get right to process, I just want to give an opportunity for the commissioners who did not participate in the small group to ask some questions of the team. Do you, Commissioner Hoffman?
Thank you. My question is, I have two. Of the top three, were there any organizations or firms that were led by people of color? And my second question is when they gave the information in reference to DEI, how many were they able to say how many were placed?
those were the percentages I gave out about like actual placement. The tricky thing is it was an expectation because it said the specific experience of the proposed team leader or the group of staff that are going to perform the work, but it didn't always necessarily say, this is the person who owns the firm or whatever. Sometimes it might be a firm where it's a very small team, or just like the person who owns it is the person who does the search, But so it's not entirely clear, but for each of the ones you can see, you could see the person who's supposedly the person who's going to come here to meet and present.
Yeah. And I don't have the project teams in front of me, but I know that's one of the things that I pay close attention to while looking at, while scoring these different firms is the makeup of the teams, and is it diverse, So I was pretty impressed by that for a couple of them.
Other questions?
I don't have any questions, but it sounds to me like you did a very thorough job, all of you, and I think you got the right values in the whole thing, and sounds really good. My concern is especially that we move forward on this because we're going to run out of time if we don't.
I've got a couple questions too. Just out of curiosity, how did it happen to land at 3? Was it really hard to decide between 3 and 4? Would there seem to be natural cutoffs? Was there a lot of discussion, or did you have some consistency when it came to your rankings and figuring all that out? I mean, how did that part work?
We had no discussions. We might have discussed, I called Chris if I had a.
I mean, I know you had a lot of discussions.
But we didn't discuss these. We sent independently our rankings, and they came up to these top 3. So that's where I'm confident in the rankings.
Yeah, like a lot of our discussion initially came from, working with the HR team, to kind of tell them what we're looking for in firms so they can kind of build out that RFP. But to the Vice Mayor's point, we did our scoring all in silos, but I was actually pleasantly surprised to see that the outcome was pretty consistent with what, I had, submitted, even though we didn't have any kind of communications with that, it still seemed to kind of line up.
The other thing as well, as you'll notice with them all, I know it's an important priority that we have a national firm that's doing this work in the search as well. And even though some of them are regional, so like, CPS HR is based in California, but they even were hiring higher up positions in Grand Rapids City municipal government. Ref Telus, they did a search in Novi. But they're doing things in a range of states and cities. SGR, even though they're mostly concentrated in Texas and surrounding states, they still did quite a bit in the Midwest, and they're just recently are doing the search for Battle Creek as well. So it'll be interesting too, because we might be able to learn a little bit about how that's going, or what we're looking at from how things are going in Battle Creek.
So I have a question for Mr. Henderson as well then. When we learned that SGR was going to be doing the Battle Creek search, I called you and I'm like, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Can you talk to us a little bit about using this or interviewing this firm given they're already being hired by Battle Creek?
Well, I think one thing that we want to look at is the timing. If I can remember correctly, I think the Battle Creek search, the first review is in mid-June, which is probably a couple of weeks. So from a timing standpoint, we're going to be far enough away to where they'll probably be done with Battle Creek by the time, if they were the successful firm, they would be done with Battle Creek by the time that the recruitment for Kalamazoo would start. And I somewhat see it as a plus, because whoever the person would be, that would give them just a little more experience about this area, recruiting this area, because recruiting is somewhat a regional thing. And even though the national firms, I think just the experience of being 10 or 15 miles away, I think it would be nothing but a plus. I don't see any negatives with that.
Now back to timeline here. So you're going to ask Clerk Boiling a question?
Yeah, Clerk Boiling. How do you see these firms coming in during the agenda to present to us?
That's a good question.
Well, I'll begin to answer part of that, Clerk Borling, is that we have selected folks before, and you create a system where you pass ballots around too, so we can interview and then vote individually, and you calculate those for us. So that would be one part of that, how that would work.
Right. I went back and looked at the last time that we did something similar, and especially where we were having interviews. And it wasn't actually a search for an appointee or something like that. It was when we filled a vacancy on the commission, we were interviewing people. And that was a separate meeting. I guess I'd have to think in terms of where it would fit in the agenda, because on the one hand, you want to make them sit through a meeting and start interviews like now? Or do we want to carve out time at the beginning of the meeting? And we'd want to leave time. We'd want to make sure there's enough time, because the thought came, what about committee of the whole? But you want to make sure there's enough time to do the interviews, have the discussions, not feel rushed before, running up against the 7 o'clock meeting. So I guess we could think about how we rearrange the agenda.
Attorney Leo.
During the city attorney recruitment, I believe each of the, and these are candidates, not executive search firms, but each one of us was at least an hour. And so I would also kind of move that with respect to the executive search firms. They're going to have a lot to tell you. You probably will take close to an hour to each person. So a special meeting might be more, would be the better route to take, so that you have that time. You don't feel rushed, because our committee of the whole meetings are 2 hours, and then you have a very busy regular agenda. It seems like a special meeting would probably be the best solution for that, for those interviews.
City Manager, what's the committee of the whole on the 16th?
Attorney Leal, while we're waiting here, I don't know if you want to think about crafting the motion that will be proposed, related, if we go ahead and presumably take a recommendation to contact these 3 firms, what would that motion sound like? Yes.
We actually have a closed session scheduled for that committee of the whole, but we might be able to talk about pushing that to a different meeting.
Yes, I think you're right. That one can be pushed back.
Okay. So we could free up the committee of the whole meeting.
But maybe back the time up a little bit before 5. But yes, Commissioner Hobb.
Will community have an opportunity to have some level of input?
All public meetings do have public comments.
I'm talking something a little more than that.
A longer time frame?
Not longer time frame, but is there a way that people can submit, once they have an opportunity to go through the packet, can they submit something in writing? I want to make sure that community has a say and a voice in this, because this next hire is going to be pivotal to how we are able to move forward in the future. And so for us to do that, I think it would be, I feel beholden to community having something to say and have, some kind of engagement with that.
Commissioner Wilson?
Oh, yeah, totally agree. I was wondering if you could, if you could speak to the points at which we had planned on engaging with the community. I know it's a little later in the process, but could you kind of speak to the points in the process in which we do wish to engage with the community or are planning on it?
Mm-hmm. Right. Once the successful firm is selected. I think one of the big things was having a community, and we don't really have the forum down yet, but really to have a forum for community input. And that's very common in these type of recruitments, to where the candidates, whether you do that after you narrow that down to your finalist, to where they can actually meet, whether it be in a town hall setting or whether it be in the city hall setting, to answer whatever questions, to kind of be like a mixer, to be not very structured, but to be able to answer, to be able to ask whatever questions that they want to ask of the candidate. So I think that's something that once you select a firm, that's something that you really want to go into detail with them so that they can design something that's specific for the community.
So I think Commissioner Huffman was also interested, whereas the input from community come on selecting the firm as well. Is that correct? Not just the candidate?
Yes. Once they've had an opportunity it's all public, so if they had the opportunity to go through the packets and take a look at the scoring and see how everybody kind of fell in place, we can do something different. So I hope we are willing to listen to community a little bit more as we move forward.
For the actual, I guess, 3 search firm candidate firms, would there be, it's a public meeting, so we would still presumably still have public comment periods for that. So would that usually come, well, I guess we could engineer it however we want to, but I wonder if there's an
directly on the action, as we do on regular agenda items.
Okay, so there would be an opportunity before, like once people have heard, but before we vote, effectively. And then I know one of the things for this was for the, once we were actually looking for candidates, but also working with Neil like we did in previous search, where we have some sort of online opportunity where people can submit, you do a survey type thing with public as well. Like we've talked about that as that being an important thing as well to keep doing. So in addition to the, doing a forum, but I would say the biggest thing, and I'm just speaking for myself here, but since all 7 of us would be voting, is please write us, as you're exploring it, write an email, come to public comment if there's opportunity, call us, meet us for coffee, whatever is helpful to do that in advance beforehand, because there is time to look through and then give us all feedback as well. So please do that if you can.
When would this information be available online then for people to look these firms up themselves after we've taken action and that sort of thing? Say approve a motion tonight to basically to ask 3 firms to come here. Can their packets be available online some way, Manager Wismus, or some way we could do that? Would that be appropriate so people could look in advance to see who the firms are going to be?
Really, I think that with these presentations, I mean, they do this all the time. They speak to commissions or Board of Aldermen or whatever your verbiage is. They do this all the time, so they've got a prepared presentation. It's not like they're going to be starting from scratch. So that probably shouldn't take a long time.
Okay, and Manager Ismer reminded me that they are in the agenda, tonight's agenda packet as well.
Yeah, and so in terms of timing, if we move the committee to 4 p.m. and have half-hour presentation and 15, 20 minutes for questions, that would give us a 15-minute break before the business meeting.
But if we move it up, that means that people are still at work. You know what I mean? So I would say keep it at 5 or even 5:30 so that people have a chance to come.
So we don't have to do it on a commission night. Maybe we could schedule it on a... I mean, that's our option. This could be... Thoughts?
it's just hard to tell because we're, school ends next Friday. So, just for the general public and probably for the commission trying to coordinate everybody's schedule. More challenging. I mean, I'm totally open to it, but I would just want to make sure that all of us can actually be here,
I don't think we ought to delay it. And I think if you want to do it earlier, but I would just say if we do it earlier, that's going to cut down the availability of people. If you do it at 5 and start the meeting a little bit later or something, that would be okay.
Because I know I threw out there calling my bloodshot eyes, but I need to make sure that we have all the details before I call. And one of the details that I really want to make sure is is there going to be a time limit on your presentation? Because if there's a 15-minute time limit, I don't want someone coming in here with a 45-minute presentation. So I think they need to know that kind of stuff up front, things like that, so they can be prepared and no surprises.
I mean, basically the biggest thing to recognize is if we don't stick to it on or around the 16th, it's going to prolong the process by about a month. So if we don't stick to that time frame, what we're looking at for their 12-week window of what their 12 to 16 weeks or whatever for it might push it back as much as a month for the process. So we kind of baked in that timeline, keeping pace with that, if that makes any sense.
Do we have an idea of how light or heavy the agenda would be for the next business meeting? Okay. Or was it too early?
So that's a good question. So if we did, seeing these presentations and not wanting to, truncate them too much, if we started at 4, I mean, is this something that presumably we could have 3 presentations and get that done before a 7 o'clock meeting, or is that?
Is there any reason you couldn't do 2 during the cow and 1 during the business meeting? Would that make any difference in terms of presentations, or is that?
I don't think that would be fair because the chambers are not full during the cow, and we have more people during the business meeting.
Sure.
So
makes sense.
What's our agenda look like, Manager Rispa?
You don't really want to know.
Okay.
12 consent items and 5 regular items.
Okay, we got Attorney
I could check with staff to see if something, but these are all, the 5 regular are contracts exceeding $1 million, so for a lot of them for water, construction.
What about a special meeting, Attorney Leal, on the 23rd of June?
Which is the following Monday after the 16th. I mean, I know it's 1 week later, but...
Well, I don't know that if it's important, because I'm going to be at a conference that week. I don't know that it's important that I'm here, so.
I think you should be here.
Okay. I'm going to be at a conference in Portland that week, so. Other than that, I'm here.
Someone coming up with a brilliant idea?
I will say that while I believe the community is important in the selection process of our new city manager, that to be able to listen to the 3 top firms, and which will be on Public Media Network, those will be there, and then we don't have to decide that night. We don't have to decide on the 16th. We can decide.
If we don't decide, it pushes it back.
It does push it back.
So I think there's going to be no perfect.
School's out, but.
So what about just going for 4 o'clock? I just say bring your cans of Red Bull or the energy drink of your choice. I'm not selling Red Bull up here, just so you know. And so how about that? Yes. Okay, so that's 4 o'clock on the 16th.
What about in terms of format? So when we're conducting outreach, would it be reasonable to say each of them has a half an hour to present and then gives us 15 to 30 minutes to ask questions of each one, or?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Right, that's great. I will get with the procurement department to get the phone numbers that I need and get on that thing first thing in the morning.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
I do have one suggestion. It happens more with candidates than it does with search firms, but if one of these search firms decides to withdraw one of the top three, then that leaves you with two. I would recommend to also have an alternate in the event one of the top three drop out. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but you need...
I think number 4.
All right, so Clerk Burling.
Just a quick question. For the business meeting then, am I correct in hearing that we probably want an item on the 7 o'clock meeting agenda for the discussion and decision? Kind of like it is tonight. Is that okay?
Talking about Portland Lewis and this process has been bananas tonight.
Odd combination of things. All right, so if we move ahead, what would the motion sound like, Attorney Leal?
There's something along the lines of, I'd move to select the following 3 executive search firms to interview on June 16, 2025, 4 p.m. at the City Commission's Committee of the Whole meeting. 1 SGR, Raftelis, CPSHR, with an alternate of poly-hire in the event one of the top 3 withdrawals from consideration.
Is there anyone who's willing to make that motion? You don't have to repeat it. It's in the record, so.
So moved.
Yeah. I'll do it. Is there support?
Support.
You're supposed to be more competitive about it than that. Okay. Commissioner Hoffman. Any further discussion? I just want to say one thing, and it's already been said to some extent, but thank you. This has been a lot of work, and a lot of that work was done over the Memorial Day weekend, I believe. So, I mean, someone had to sit down and go through a bunch of applications and really think seriously about it, and I think it is telling that you ended up, with the same 3, to be quite honest. I think it's, I think that's fantastic. So, there's a motion on the floor. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Pradel.
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hess.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The motion passes.
Mayor, just point of inquiry. So something that I think is worth bringing up is when we initially formed this group, it was really, this group of 3 was only to get us to this point, if that makes any sense. So I think it might be worth making sure that everybody still wants to, would be interested, that there's not anybody else that would want to, and then who is involved moving forward, if that makes any sense. Because the charge was to get to this point. It wasn't to lead a search committee for the city manager. Does that make sense?
Sure. Okay. Good point. I don't know if we need to discuss that. We don't have a full commission here tonight, so as far as rearranging the chairs, if you're okay with that, we'll have some time to think about that before that process starts. Now, then, is the opportunity for commissioner comments. Any commissioners that would like to make comments this evening?
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say, anybody that knows me knows that when it comes to human beings and housing, that's my wheelhouse. And I will go hard for our community members who are, I don't even like the word marginalized, but for those who don't have access to not only affordable housing period. And so I never want to be offensive to any community member, but this is who I am. And I will say the things that need to be said, And there is a way that in this community, we can do something creative, we can do something that is out of the box, and we have all the resources that we need. The federal government is not coming to our rescue anymore, as we used to know. So what can we do here locally? And I believe there is a space where industries, corporations, industries, philanthropy, city, county government, we can all come together, because it's like the workforce that we're doing right now with the community change grant. That hits every box. It's workforce development, it's critical repairs and energy efficiency. It's also climate resiliency hubs for each neighborhood association that's involved in that project. We're doing it, and we can do it bigger and better locally, and it doesn't always have to be a major multifamily development. We need to think a little smaller, about fourplexes within the neighborhoods and some of these slots, and do it strategically, and then do it throughout the county. So to Mr. Bogan, if you're listening, I respect you and I respect your work, and I know you are for community, and from my lips to your ears, I will always speak up on behalf of those who have been not been given the access to even apply, let alone be approved for housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Other commissioners that would like to make any comments this evening? Commissioner Pradel.
Just wanted to thank Commissioner Wilson and Vice Mayor Hess for working on this process again. Been great partners to work on this, and we're not running for re-election this year. So the other folks I want to thank is I really want to thank Aaron and James as well for their work, his professional staff, and Patricia Vargas as well has been helping us as from administrative support as well. So really thank them for their work and wise counsel as well. So thank you.
Vice Mayor Hess.
I'll go. Indeed, thank you both. It has been an honor to be in part of this process, but now as we move forward, I am confident that we will be able to locate the next city manager for the city of Kalamazoo. I was able to give a proclamation to Friendship Village on their 50th anniversary, and that's 50 years of growth and evolution, and their impact on seniors in our community, and their growth is including 76 more units on their property, and so we're excited about that. And congratulations to them. Congratulations also to all the high school graduates that have just recently completed their high school careers, and Godspeed to you on your journeys as you move forward. And in this month of Pride, I look forward to celebrating this entire month of June to make sure that people can love who they love, and that we can have a safe and healthy and impactful Pride celebration this Saturday at Arcadia Festival site. Lastly, I was able to be at the Tiger game last 2 Sundays ago, when I was supposed to be doing the applications, and there's a man in our section who decided that he alone wanted to make that stadium come alive. He stood up and he said, "Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do the wave." And a few people did it, sat down. A few more people did it, sat down. And all of a sudden, there was an amazing moment when a critical mass of people took hold of his idea, and it happened. And that stadium became electric. And it was amazing to see and amazing to be a part of that kind of energy. A quote that is attributed to Mahatma Gandhi said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." So if you want to see 37,000 people cheering for the Tigers, do it. If you want to have our neighborhoods be clean, do it. 1 block. If each one of us did 1 block, it would be amazing. If you want to have more kindness, more grace, more patience, and more love in the world, then be kind, then be gracious, then be patient, and be loving. Big gratitude to this commission for doing what we do. Thank you, Mayor, for always supporting the work of the commission. Thank you.
All right, well, I just want to to thank everyone here of my commission colleagues. It's a pleasure working with you. I appreciate it, hanging in to do this work. And speaking about opportunity, which we do talk about a lot up here, one of the things that is just a huge blessing for sitting in this seat is getting invited to all the community events that I get to go to, which are in some ways numberless and impossible to all to attend. But I just want to highlight a couple things about us being an opportunity area. And, it was not so long ago when actually the idea of having a medical school in Kalamazoo was not on anybody's radar, or maybe somebody was thinking about it, I didn't know about it. And then the 8th class from the medical school just graduated. 8th class, 84 people in that class. And, one of the driving principles for this medical school is basically health equity for all. That's powerful. So thank you to the WMU Med School and all the work that's happening and all that occurs in the community, whether you're talking about street medicine and other kinds of offshoots that occur out of us having that opportunity for people here in town. Additionally, I'm sure most of us got to go out to the new Career and Technical Education site, which also happens to be in the city of Kalamazoo. And Dr. Martin, who's the KRESA director, was there. I mean, unbelievably beautiful installation. And you talk about opportunity. I mean, that is opportunity that is demonstrated just on the building itself. And I know they're going to be building a great program in there, but that is just another piece in this category of opportunity for all. The energy related to that work, phenomenal. I just want to thank everybody at KRESA and all the community folks that came together to support that effort. Just 2 items on a long, long list. I love you, Kalamazoo. We're adjourned.